Chapter 839. Seeing that no one dared to make a sound, Long Shenyuan coldly snorted and reprimanded, "You only know how to be arrogant in your own home. The good reputation of the Long family has been ruined by you all. But our Long family can't be bullied like this and just ignore it." Someone said faintly. "That's because Long Tingfei hit the muzzle of the gun and gave the other party a chance. Moreover, do you know the purpose of Tang Zheng's visit?" Everyone shook their heads. "Send someone to keep an eye on the hotel. Every move of Tang Zheng must be reported to me. I want to know all their whereabouts in Dianan." Long Shenyuan pondered for a long time and made a decision. Seeing that Long Shenyuan hesitated for a long time and actually just bide his time and wait for the changes, many people felt dissatisfied and said, "Patriarch, isn't this too easy for him? You think it's too easy for him, right? Then you go find him for revenge, or you can find someone in the Long family who can fight with Tang Zheng." Long Shenyuan said in a bad mood. Tang Zheng's strength was outstanding, this was already a recognized fact. Although Long Shenyuan was in the border area, he knew very well that he was not even a match for Tang Zheng. Moreover, he had already fought with Tang Zheng before. At that time he couldn't do anything to Tang Zheng, let alone now. As soon as these words came out, everyone lowered their heads in shame. Long Xuanyuan's gaze passed through the crowd and floated in the direction of the hotel. He wondered in his heart, "Surname Tang, what is your purpose in coming to Dianan?" Tang Zheng didn't know the fear of the Long family, nor did he know how much of a storm Long Tingfei's death had caused in the officialdom of Dianan. Many people who had been bullied by Long Tingfei in the open and in the dark cheered. Long Tingfei finally had his retribution. Of course, more people guessed that the Long family would definitely be angry and perhaps set off a bloody storm. However, what surprised these people was that the Long family actually endured it, as if this matter had never happened at all. This was definitely not the style of the Long family. Tang Zheng was not in the mood to care about these things. Early the next morning, he left the city with the Empyrean ferry and Nana and went straight to the 100,000 Mountains. Although Me and the others thought that he was taking Linger around without doing anything proper, they didn't dare to refute him. When he stood in front of the 100,000 Mountains again, Tang Zheng had mixed feelings. The 100,000 Mountains were indescribably important to him. If it was not for the 100,000 Mountains, he would not have had that fortuitous encounter, the shaman tribe Xiaobai, the heaven-shocking bow and the sun-shooting arrows. Of course, the 100 Faces Star Lord would not have left the Buzhou Mountain and wreaked havoc in the world. One peck and one drink, whether it was a blessing or a curse, there was no way to truly distinguish between them. Although the 100,000 Mountains were still lush and green, it gave people a feeling that it was more dangerous than before. In the past, the 100,000 Mountains was filled with miasma, swamps, and ferocious beasts. For ordinary people, it was an absolutely dangerous place. But today, although the miasma had mostly disappeared because of the breaking of the restrictions, the demonic beasts had already occupied this pure land, making it even more dangerous. Not only ordinary people, even the army and warriors were unable to survive in this 100,000 Mountains. Linger sniffed slightly and frowned. What a heavy demonic aura. The 100,000 Mountains is filled with demonic beasts, so of course the demonic aura is heavy. Tang Zheng said. Linger curled her lips and said, "There are too many brutal auras in this demonic aura, Linger doesn't like it." Although Linger could be considered a demon, she was transformed from a ginseng and did not like to kill. "When we go in later, follow us. If anything happens, I will protect you," Tang Zheng warned. Linger smiled brightly. Linger will also protect herself. Although Linger has been busy with work these days, she has not relaxed her cultivation. Tang Zheng smiled approvingly and walked into the 100,000 Mountains with the two of them. At the same time, Long Shenyuan also received the news and was extremely shocked. Why did these people enter the 100,000 Mountains? Moreover, it was not just Tang Zheng. What was the meaning of the other two people going together? Could it be related to the earthquake a while ago? South Yunnan had always been prone to earthquakes, but the Long family was not an ordinary family. How could the news that was used to fool the common people fool the Long family? Long Shenyuan was very clear that the tremor a while ago was not an earthquake but came from the 100,000 Mountains. Something must have happened. However, he was unwilling to take the risk of entering the 100,000 Mountains, but the 100,000 Mountains was in South Yunnan, his territory. This had always been a rather troublesome problem for him. Now it seemed that something big had happened in the 100,000 Mountains, which was why it attracted Tang Zheng to come all the way here. So Tang Zheng did not come here specifically for the Long family? Immediately, Long Shenyuan could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Since the other party was not here for the Long family, then he could not provoke them. As for the death of Long Tingfei, he could only blame himself. Long Xinyuan would not go to war with Tang Zheng for the sake of a mere disciple of a concubine's branch family. But another problem was placed in front of him. Tang Zheng must have a motive for entering the 100,000 mountains. Should he go or not? Go. After hesitating for a long time, he finally made up his mind. The moment Tang Zheng stepped into the 100,000 mountains, he felt that the aura between heaven and earth had changed. It was as if there were countless pairs of eyes staring at them, which made him feel very strange. Empyrean Fairy said indifferently, "There are demon beasts monitoring us." The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth curled up and he said jokingly, "If they dare to stop us, then they can only blame themselves for being unlucky." Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, a wave of heavy footsteps rang out. A few demon beasts blocked their path, and their eyes bloomed with a fierce light. Tang Zheng coldly glanced at the other party. The strength of these demon beasts was too low, they were simply courting death. He was not going to be polite. Just as he was about to make a move, Xiao Bai, who was on his shoulder, had already made a move first. With a flash of white light, it charged into the group of demonic beasts. It didn't even breathe fire. Its little claws slapped the demonic beasts' bodies, causing them to fall to the ground. They were only left with the breath of air, not the breath of air. Linger happily clapped her hands and said excitedly, "Wow, Xiao Bai is so powerful." Xiao Bai was complacent, and directly landed in Linger's arms, and arched into her embrace. Tang Zheng speechlessly rolled his eyes. This little pervert actually knew how to take advantage of her, but Linger was completely unaware. Linger seemed to have a natural closeness with Xiao Bai. Apart from Tang Zheng, Xiao Bai was the closest to her. As for the Empyrean Fairy, Xiao Bai did not dare to act rashly in front of her, and even more so did not dare to jump onto her shoulder or embrace. The Empyrean Fairy looked at Xiao Bai and said, "This little thing is quite powerful." The Empyrean Fairy had also wanted to investigate Xiao Bai's origins, but after a few days of hard work, she gave up because there were no clues. This made Tang Zheng even more astonished. What exactly was Xiao Bai's origins? Even the famous Empyrean Fairy did not know anything about him. The three of them advanced for a while and encountered a few more demonic beasts. Xiao Bai did the same thing and eliminated the other party. After repeating this process, they actually encountered a few more waves of demonic beasts, and they gradually went deeper into the heart of the 100,000 mountains. Wait a minute. Suddenly the Empyrean Fairy called out. Tang Zheng looked at her suspiciously and asked, "What's wrong? Didn't you notice another problem?" The Empyrean Fairy asked in a deep voice. Tang Zheng shook his head blankly. The Empyrean Fairy said, "Since you keep saying that the 100,000 mountains is an absolutely dangerous place where demonic beasts run rampant, what kind of demonic beasts have we encountered along the way? How strong are they?" Tang Zheng immediately understood and suddenly said, "You're saying that the strength of those demonic beasts is too weak, and completely different from my judgment." Yes, if just these demonic beasts were enough to judge the 100,000 mountains as a dangerous place, then that would be too ridiculous. Even if a slightly stronger martial artist were to face those demonic beasts, they would not be too passive and would not suffer too much. The Empyrean Fairy solemnly said. Tang Zheng's heart thumped and he secretly said, "That's right." Su Yingtian once said that the National Security Bureau and the Dragon Group had sent people into the 100,000 mountains to investigate, but they did not return. Not long after they entered, they met with misfortune. The people of these two organizations were naturally not ordinary people, and they were completely annihilated as soon as they entered the 100,000 mountains. This showed that even the demonic beasts in the periphery were very strong. But the demonic beasts they encountered before could not be considered strong, and it was impossible for them to completely annihilate the people of the National Security Bureau or the Dragon Group. What did this mean? It meant that there was a world of difference between the defensive power of the demonic beasts in the past and now. Where did those powerful demonic beasts that were originally guarding the periphery of the 100,000 mountains go? Could this be related to the earthquake? Tang Zheng shook his head, unable to guess the reason. No matter what happens here, we have to have a goal. We can't wander around the 100,000 mountains blindly. After all, this is the 100,000 mountains and the area is vast. If we don't have a goal, it would simply be a waste of time. The Empyrean Fairy reminded. Tang Zheng muttered to himself for a moment, then said, "Let's go to the prehistoric heavenly tomb." The prehistoric heavenly tomb was the core area of the 100,000 mountains. Not only were there countless mysterious tombs, there was also the Buzhou Mountain. This became Tang Zheng's first choice of destination. If anything were to happen in the 100,000 mountains, the prehistoric heavenly tomb would be the most likely place. The Empyrean fairy didn't know what was inside the 100,000 mountains, so she could only agree. Although the Empyrean fairy was also someone from thousands of years ago, the 100,000 mountains had been sealed for who knows how many years. Even she did not know what was inside and had never stepped into this place before. Therefore, she could only accept Tang Zheng's suggestion and quickly rush to the prehistoric heavenly tomb with him. There were no outsiders here, so their speed was extremely fast. Sometimes they would even walk on air, looking extremely carefree. They only used half a day to arrive in front of the prehistoric heavenly tomb. The gigantic black stone tablet stood in front of them, still giving off a strong sense of shock. "This stone tablet is poisonous, don't touch it," Tang Zheng reminded. Chapter 840. Tang Zheng was someone who had been to the ghost realm, so of course he was not unfamiliar with this so-called death aura. Speaking of it, it was yin qi causing people to have a strong sense of unease. The current yin qi was even stronger than before, no different from the ghost realm. The three of them carefully walked in. There were no longer any demonic beasts coming to stop them. Looking around, it was quiet, deathly silent. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, a loud sound came from afar. The three of them were startled and subconsciously stopped in their tracks. Looking up, they saw black clouds pressing down on them. The sky was extremely low, as if they could reach it with their hands, giving off a very oppressive feeling. Their pupils constricted and they couldn't help but cry out in alarm. Giant. The sound of rapid breathing rang out in the deathly silent tomb. It was exceptionally ear-piercing, causing one's nerves to involuntarily tense up. In the distance, a giant that towered into the clouds stood between heaven and earth. This person was hundreds of meters tall, equivalent to a small mountain. Although Tang Zheng had seen the size of the four symbols venerable before, he was still shocked by this giant. This giant was several times taller than the four symbols venerable. Furthermore, it was not a stone statue but a living person. Tang Zheng had never thought that there would be giants in this world. Furthermore, infinity was so huge that it made ordinary humans feel insignificant. The 9 heavens maidens' frown deepened. She murmured to herself, "It is said that the giant tribe did exist in ancient times. However, the giant tribe was small in number. Later on, they gradually disappeared and went extinct. Why is there a giant in this prehistoric heavenly tomb? Giant race?" Tang Zheng was shocked. Is there really a giant race in history? Empyrean fairy nodded. That is indeed the case, but the giant race has long been exterminated. They were all puzzled. Furthermore, Tang Zheng had come to the prehistoric heavenly tomb twice, but he had never encountered a giant. Why would there be a giant this time? Could it be that the 100 Transformation Star Lord was behind this again? Tang Zheng was furious. Just how many more tricks did this 100 Transformation Star Lord have up his sleeves? Roar. The giant roared towards the sky, the sound waves spreading in all directions. The black clouds in the sky were blown apart, but they quickly gathered together. Boom. The giant raised his foot and placed it on the ground. The ground trembled as if there was an earthquake. However, it was clear that this tremor was completely different from the earthquake that was rumored in the outside world. This tremor was far less intense than that one, and it could only be felt on the ground nearby. It definitely wouldn't spread beyond the 100,000 mountains. The giant walked deeper into the desolate heavenly tomb with large strides. The three of them immediately looked in that direction. However, the sky was dark and they couldn't see clearly, but Tang Zheng knew that it was the direction of Mount Buzhou. Let's follow them, Tang Zheng hurriedly said and then chased after him. The Empyrean fairy opened her eyes wide in curiosity when she saw the numerous tombstones in front of her. However, she soon discovered something strange and cried out, "These tombstones have all been opened." All of Tang Zheng's attention was on the giant. When he heard this, he quickly looked over. Sure enough, these tombs were all broken open, leaving behind large pits, but there was nothing in the tombs. Tang Zheng suddenly remembered the tomb of the Beast King. The Beast King was almost resurrected, and if not for Xiao Bai's help, the Beast King would have really been resurrected. These tombs were empty. Could it be that the people who were buried here had also been resurrected? With that thought, Tang Zheng's entire body turned cold, and his heartstrings trembled. If that was really the case, then it would be too terrifying. The people buried in this desolate heavenly tomb were all powerful figures from the ancient era. If they were to revive, then the balance of power in this world would be completely broken. Ordinary people would not be able to resist these experts at all. They would only be sending themselves to their deaths. It can't be. What ability does the 100 Transformation Star Lord have to revive the dead? This is too heaven-defying, it's impossible for him to do it. Tang Jing kept comforting himself. Empyrean Fairy looked at the tomb and muttered to herself. The three of them continued to chase after the giant and gradually walked out of the tomb. Tang Jing's heart started to beat faster than usual. In this desolate heavenly tomb, he had experienced a lot and gained a lot. Among them, the most important thing was Qi Yu's heart. He subconsciously touched his chest. Qi Yu's heart was inside and had already become a part of his body. Speaking of which, Qi Yu's heart had helped him many times. The thing that left the deepest impression on him was that time in the Sky Cavern, he had subdued the Sword Soul and repelled the Sword God, resolving a huge crisis for him. From then on, Qi Yu's heart seemed to have completely calmed down. There was no reaction at all and Tang Jing had almost forgotten about it. But after coming here, these memories surged up like a tidal wave, causing him to sigh with emotion. A moment later they walked out of the tomb and got closer and closer to the giant. However, the giant did not seem to notice them and continued to walk forward. Wah wah wah. The rumbling sound of flowing water came from the front. From afar, a waterfall could be seen falling from the sky, flowing down 3,000 feet. The source of the waterfall seemed to be in the sky, hidden behind the clouds. Tang Jing dared to assert that the so-called famous waterfall attractions in the world were far less shocking than this waterfall. The waterfall was not wide, but the water that flowed down had a strong impact. It did not fall to the ground but instead fell into a huge canyon. The last time Tang Jing went to the Buzhou mountain he did not pass by this place so he did not know that there was such a place. Pay attention to that canyon. Empyrean Fairy's expression turned cold as she reminded him. Tang Jing was shocked. He immediately looked over and saw that the canyon was filled with a black fog, which enveloped the top of the canyon. The river water directly passed through the black qi and fell into the canyon. Tang Jing was not unfamiliar with the black qi. It was Yin Qi, and the Yin Qi here was actually even stronger than the ghost realm. This made Tang Jing puzzled. What was the bottom of the canyon? Why was there such a strong Yin Qi gathered? If an ordinary person breathed in a little of this Yin Qi, they would have horrible illusions and be scared to death. The giant stopped and stood at the edge of the cliff. He lowered his head and let out a shocking roar toward the bottom of the canyon. Brr! Like a sudden clap of thunder, the mist-like Yin energy was immediately blown away. What is he doing? Tang Jing asked in confusion. Empyrean Fairy listened carefully and suddenly shouted, "There is movement below the canyon." Movement? Could it be something else? Tang Jing was shocked. There was no lack of surprises today. This canyon is long enough. Let's stay away from the giant and go to the edge of the canyon to see what is going on below. This was exactly what Empyrean Fairy wanted, so the three of them carefully avoided the giant and walked toward the canyon. Ling Er's expression had become extremely unnatural. This was the first time she had encountered such a dangerous and exciting thing since she was a child. She could not help but be a little flustered. Tang Jing noticed her strangeness and quickly held her hand and comforted her. "Ling don't be afraid, I am here." Ling opened her eyes wide and smiled sweetly. She nodded and said, "And Ling will listen to Master. With Master here, Ling is not afraid." The three of them finally quietly came to the edge of the canyon and looked down. The light was very dim but they could vaguely see something climbing up the cliff. Something is climbing up. The three of them looked at each other and saw the horror in each other's eyes. What kind of thing would climb out of this gloomy canyon? They were afraid that it was not something good. Tang Jing quickly circulated his true qi and his eyes lit up. His vision was finally better and he could finally distinguish what those things were. Demonic beasts, those are actually demonic beasts. Tang Jing exclaimed in a low voice. These demonic beasts were obviously more powerful than the ones they had encountered before, and not just by a little bit. Could it be that all the powerful demonic beasts in the 100,000 mountains had run to this canyon? This was probably the case. But why did the demonic beasts go to the canyon? This should be related to the 100 Faces Star Lord. They had been in the 100,000 mountains for a while, but they had not seen any trace of the 100 Faces Star Lord. Where was he? In the Buzhou Mountains? Or, in this canyon? They are indeed demonic beasts, but look, some demonic beasts have fallen from the cliff again. Could it be that there is something stopping them from climbing up? Are you saying that there is something in this canyon that is fighting against the demonic beasts? Tang Jing was shocked. In this bottomless canyon, there was not a trace of sunlight for many years. What kind of living creature could there be? What kind of living creature could endure this hellish torment? Let's get closer. The Empyrean Fairy suggested. Tang Jing pondered for a moment and agreed. Although it was risky this time, they had to get to the bottom of this. Otherwise there would be endless trouble. The three of them quietly moved in the direction of the giant, which was closer to the location of the demonic beasts. They stopped again and found a new situation. The demonic beasts were actually tied with iron chains. The iron chains extended along the cliff into the canyon and disappeared into the darkness. The iron chains were straight. Obviously there was a strong force on the other end. The demonic beasts crawled up with great difficulty, as if they were resisting the force on the other end of the iron chains. What is it? They could already be sure that there was something on the other end of the iron chains, but they were not sure what it was. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Demonic beasts constantly flew from the cliff and were pulled down into the canyon abyss. However, the other demonic beasts continued to persevere and climb up bit by bit. The giant stared at all this with a pair of huge eyes. Suddenly he found that more and more demonic beasts were falling down. He roared angrily and grabbed the waterfall with his big hand. It was as if he had grabbed the waterfall in the air. A huge water chain was waved in his hand and pulled towards the depths of the canyon. Boom! With a loud sound, Yin Chi soared into the sky from the canyon. The water chain immediately shattered and turned into droplets of water. Chapter 841. At the bottom of the canyon, in the darkness, a huge object gradually emerged from the strong Yin Chi. Tang Zheng and the other two stared at it without blinking. Bronze coffin. What a big bronze coffin. Tang Zheng was shocked and couldn't help but exclaim. The bronze coffin was about 100 meters long and dozens of meters wide, almost the same size as the huge canyon. The bronze coffin was tied with pitch-black iron chains, and the other end was tied to the demonic beasts. It turned out that so many demonic beasts were tied to the chains to drag the bronze coffin out of the canyon. What was in the bronze coffin? A dead person? Was there a need for such a big coffin? One had to know that even the coffin of the first Emperor Qin Shi Huang was mediocre and could not be compared to this thing in front of him. Who was the person in the coffin? Tang Zheng couldn't imagine it. As for the purpose of the demonic beasts dragging the bronze coffin, he couldn't guess. Brr, brr. Suddenly, a strange roar sounded from the abyss of the canyon. A strong Yin Chi blew away the tornado and directly wrapped around the bronze coffin. The demonic beasts were stunned and had to stop. Tang Zheng could clearly see that the land of darkness was emitting waves of black qi that soared into the sky. At the same time, another white light also soared into the sky. White bones. Taking a closer look, the white light turned out to be white bones, like the bones left behind after a rotten corpse. These bones did not fall apart. Instead, they gathered together as if they were a single person. They trembled with the black light without fear. Tang Zheng was suddenly enlightened, and suddenly remembered the empty graves he saw earlier. Could it be that these white bones crawled out from those graves? To be able to make the white bones move like a person, it was enough to show that the spell was strange and powerful. Perhaps all of this was related to the 100 Faces Star Lord. Tang Zheng looked around trying to find the traces of the 100 Faces Star Lord, but in the end he found that it was in vain. Why was the 100 Faces Star Lord absent from such an important scene? He liked to play, so he shouldn't miss this scene. Those black lights did not have a concrete shape at all. They transformed into all kinds of strange shapes and clashed with the piles of white bones. Once the white bone was wrapped in the black light, it would not take long for the bone to turn black and fall apart. This meant that the black gas was extremely powerful. He didn't know what it was. The black light dragged white bones, and the demonic beast immediately regained its ability to move, dragging the coffin and climbing up. The giant suddenly roared and grabbed the waterfall that seemed to be falling from the sky. A white water chain was formed again and was thrown into the canyon. Boom! The water chains shattered the black gas. The demonic beasts were overjoyed. Taking advantage of this gap, they quickly climbed up. Some demonic beasts finally climbed out of the canyon. These demonic beasts were obviously more vigilant than the giants. When the demonic beasts climbed up, they immediately noticed Tang Zheng and the others. Brr! The demonic beast roared angrily. The giant looked down upon them, and its huge eyes immediately locked onto the three of them. Whoosh! The water chains danced in the air and flew out of the canyon, directly attacking Tang Zheng and the others. Tang Zheng did not dare to wait for death. He hurriedly took out his War Soul sword. The bright sword light collided with the water chains. The water chains exploded, and Tang Zheng flipped several times in the air before he could stabilize his body. Tang Zheng was shocked. He was the only one who knew the power of this attack. This seemingly casual attack was definitely the killing power of a golden elixir realm cultivator. If he hadn't been careless, he would have suffered a great loss. Seeing that Tang Zheng was safe and sound, the giant raised its foot and stomped over. Tang Zheng somersaulted in the air and dodged. The place where the giant foot landed, rocks flew and dust rose, creating a large crater. Tang Jing knew the killing power of this kind of big guy. The Four Symbols Venerable was a big guy. In actual combat they often had the upper hand by virtue of their size. Unfortunately, the Four Symbols Venerable was damaged and could no longer be used. Tang Jing tried his best, but he couldn't repair the Four Symbols Venerable. Since the first attack did not hit, the giant continued to attack Tang Jing. Tang Jing relied on his nimble life to shuttle back and forth, dodging the attacks by a hair's breadth each time. Without the giant holding them back, the situation in the canyon changed. The strange black gas gradually gained the upper hand. More and more white bones were dyed black and turned into bone dust. The demonic beast roared again and again. It tried to pull the bronze coffin up, but it also failed. The two sides were in a stalemate. Loud sounds came from the bottom of the canyon. The mountain shook and huge rocks fell from both sides of the canyon. "Giant, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and pull the bronze coffin up." An angry roar came from the bottom of the canyon. Tang Jing was stunned. This voice was all too familiar. It was the 100 Faces Star Lord. It turned out that the 100 Faces Star Lord had gone down to the bottom of the canyon. Hearing the 100 Faces Star Lord's voice, Tang Jing didn't hesitate. No matter what was in the bronze coffin, since the 100 Faces Star Lord wanted to pull it out, he had to stop him. "Fuyao! Stop them!" Tang Jing shouted. Although the mysterious Maiden of the Nine Heavens was also very curious about what was inside the bronze coffin and even wanted to find out, after hearing Tang Jing's words, she forcefully suppressed the curiosity in her heart. Her figure flashed and she kicked the demonic beasts that were climbing up the cliff. These demonic beasts were resisting the huge force coming from the other side. They couldn't resist the Empyrean Fairy at all. They were fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. In fact, even if they didn't divert their attention, they wouldn't be a match for the Empyrean Fairy. As for Ling'er, although she was still afraid when she saw Tang Jing and the Empyrean Fairy joining the battle, she didn't want to fall behind. She rushed towards the demonic beasts. Fortunately, these demonic beasts were restrained by the bronze coffin. Otherwise, Ling'er would be at a great disadvantage. Ling'er didn't have any Dharma treasures. Her tender fists were also very powerful. She forced a few demonic beasts down the cliff. Hearing the 100 Faces Star Lord's urging, the giant's attack power increased sharply. Tang Jing's situation wasn't optimistic, but the Empyrean Fairy finally made her move against the giant. Boom! The giant took a series of punches from the Empyrean Fairy and fell straight down the canyon. Tang Jing was shocked. This was the difference between the Golden Elixir Realm and the Incarnation Realm. It was an insurmountable gap. The giant fell and hit the bronze coffin. The demonic beasts struggling on the cliff were all knocked down the cliff by the impact. "Who is it?" The 100 Faces Star Lord roared. Obviously he also knew that someone was coming. Tang Jing sneered but did not reply. He only looked down at the canyon from above. When the giant landed on the bronze coffin, the chains on the bronze coffin were all broken, and the black chi immediately wrapped around the giant. The giant kept roaring and struggling, but the black gas was even more powerful. It firmly entangled the giant, making it impossible for him to get away. The bronze coffin quickly fell to the bottom of the canyon. It was about to disappear into the darkness. Whoosh! A person jumped down from the cliff. Tang Jing was shocked and shouted, "No!" However, it was too late. He watched as the Empyrean Fairy fell into the bronze coffin. From afar, the Empyrean Fairy's voice sounded, "I want to see what's inside." Tang Jing shook his head and sighed helplessly. He was also curious about what was inside the bronze coffin that made the 100 Faces Star Lord think so. However, when he saw the black gas he flinched. With his cultivation he might not be able to unravel this secret. However, when the Empyrean Fairy jumped down, he knew that he couldn't stay out of it. He pulled Ling'er and said, "Hold on to me. Don't be afraid." With Master here, Ling'er is not afraid. Ling'er nodded and hugged him meekly. Xiao Bai also lay on Tang Jing's shoulder. He jumped and the biting cold wind blew past their ears. The two people and one beast jumped down the cliff. However, Tang Jing didn't jump toward the bronze pipe. That was because there was a black gas on it that made him afraid. Before figuring out what the other party was, it was better to be careful. After falling for a while, they were surrounded by darkness. Only the whistling of the wind could be heard. There was no light at all. It was so dark that they couldn't even see their own fingers. Tang Jing ignited a ball of true fire on his finger and slightly illuminated the surroundings. However, there was still nothing left. There was only darkness, boundless darkness. Suddenly, a loud sound came from below. Then, a ball of light erupted and rushed into the sky. He saw piles of white bones. These bones were turned into fine powder by the light. Tang Zheng lamented in his heart. These experts of a generation couldn't even rest in peace after death. He didn't know what method the 100 Faces Star Lord had used to summon them and used them. In the end, they were all smashed into pieces. If those experts were in heaven, they would probably hate the 100 Faces Star Lord to the bone. With the help of this ball of light, Tang Zheng could finally see the bottom of the canyon clearly. The bronze coffin had fallen to the ground. The giant had already stood up, but there were huge black spots on his body. He was still fighting against the black gas, trying to shake it off. However, the black gas was very difficult to deal with and he couldn't do so. As for the Empyrean fairy, she stood in the air and floated above the bronze coffin. She stared at the bronze coffin as if she wanted to see through it. Another scene that attracted Tang Zheng's attention was that of two people. The 100 Faces Star Lord was fighting someone. This person was very powerful and was actually on par with the 100 Faces Star Lord. Furthermore, his body was covered in a black gas. His face was blurry and not easy to recognize. However, Tang Zheng only looked for a while and recognized that this person was actually Tian Chanzi. Tang Zheng's eyes immediately widened. How could it be Tian Chanzi? How could his cultivation be compared to the 100 Faces Star Lord? Furthermore, the spells and divine skills Tian Chanzi used were completely different. They were definitely not heaven-flying immortal or similar methods. Tang Zheng was very unfamiliar with them. However, although the face was blurry, Tang Zheng would never mistake it. He was Tian Chanzi. However, his strength had become exceptionally strong. Tang Zheng was very unfamiliar with him. Chapter 842. Tang Zheng felt that it was unimaginable, as if he was dreaming. Could it be that Tian Chanzi had hidden his strength before, and this was the real him? No way. If he had been so powerful from the start, he would not have been controlled by 100 Change Star Lord in Mount Buzhou, and almost lost his life. Tian Chanzi had disappeared for so long. Could it be that some fortuitous encounter had happened to him during this period of time, and that was why his strength had increased by leaps and bounds? But this was too exaggerated. There was a certain limit to the increase of one's cultivation, and it was impossible to increase by too much without a limit. There must be a demon behind this abnormality. Tang Zheng felt that something unknown must have happened during this period of time. Empyrean Fairy also saw Tian Chanzi, and frowned suspiciously. She had fought with Tian Chanzi before and was very clear about his strength. Looking at his current strength, her heart was also stirred up, and she muttered to herself. Tian Chanzi did not say a word, and ignored Tang Zheng as if he was a stranger. In his eyes, there was only 100 Change Star Lord, and each of his moves was incomparably fierce. The bottom of the canyon was turned upside down, rocks swirled in the air, and Yin Qi soared to the sky. The ground was already covered with the corpses of demonic beasts, and there were also piles of white bones. It was like hell on earth, and coupled with the environment where the Yin Qi roared, it was really frightening. Integral Ling Er could not help but tremble and said, "Master, what's wrong with him? Why does Ling Er feel that I don't recognize him?" Ling Er's perception was sharp and her temperament was simple, so she made the most direct judgment. Tang Zheng shivered and thought that Ling Er was right. However, the most important thing now was not to find out what had happened to Tian Chanzi, but to deal with 100 Change Star Lord. 100 Change Star Lord also saw Tang Zheng and his pupils shrank and said, "So it's you. The demon race's attack in the sea must have something to do with you, right?" Seeing that 100 Change Star Lord recognized him, Tang Zheng nodded naturally and said, "So what? 100 Change Star Lord, you don't care about the lives of the people in this world, and you actually activated the Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array without permission, and led the demon race back. You almost caused a great disaster and harmed the world. You are too ruthless." 100 Change Star Lord heard this and laughed crazily and said, "Ha, too ruthless? So what if those people died? Moreover, the people I killed when I activated the Mountain and River Blood Sacrifice Array were from the Japanese nation. A few decades ago the Japanese nation invaded Wuxia. Don't tell me you still think it's a pity that their people died? 100 Change Star Lord, and the people of Wuxia. And Wuxia, and the Xiaxias. Wuxia. 100 Change Star Lord didn't care and said, "What do the lives of mortals have to do with me?" Tang Zheng was furious. 100 Change Star Lord was a madman. No wonder he broke Mount Buzhou. In his eyes there were no rules. Except for himself, other people's lives were like grass. This kind of person was an absolute scourge in the world. He didn't know why he didn't kill him directly back then but imprisoned him. It's a pity that I didn't bring back too many demons this time, and most of them were intercepted and destroyed by you. But those demons are chess pieces and it doesn't matter if they die. My biggest gain is this. 100 Change Star Lord pointed at the bronze coffin in front of him proudly. This is your biggest gain? What do you mean? Tang Jing asked curiously. 100 Change Star Lord sneered and said, anyway, none of you can leave here today, so there's no harm in telling you. This bronze coffin hides a great secret, and if the demons didn't return, I wouldn't know this secret. Tang Jing was confused, but he also realized the seriousness of the situation. The so-called great secret mentioned by 100 Change Star Lord was definitely not a small matter. Tang Jing subconsciously looked at the bronze coffin, wondering what kind of great secret was hidden in it that made 100 Change Star Lord mobilize so many people. What's the secret inside? Tang Jing asked. The secret that I've been searching for, 100 Change Star Lord said mysteriously. Seeing that Tang Jing still wanted to ask, he added, it's a pity that the villainous heavens are against me. This Tian Chanzi actually followed me all the way here and ruined my plans. After saying this, 100 Change Star Lord glared at Tian Chanzi with hatred and regret. Tang Jing asked suspiciously, how did he ruin your plans? The thing protecting the bronze coffin actually chose to merge with him, increasing his strength in an instant, and using his body to fight against me. Tang Jing was shocked. Tian Chanzi was not hiding his strength, but had really reached his current strength in a very short time. This was too incredible. The Empyrean Fairy also stared at Tian Chanzi with burning eyes, trying to find an answer from him, but it was all in vain. Everything here was full of mystery and even she did not know. In fact, although the Empyrean Fairy had a special identity as the daughter of the Emperor of Heaven, she was trapped in the mountain river map by the Emperor of Heaven for some reason, so she did not know what had happened for a long time. Later she escaped from the mountain river map and met Qin Shi Huang, who helped her unify the world. Later she slept in Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum for 1,000 years, so she knew very little about the outside world. Looking at the bronze coffin, she could not find any information related to it in her mind. But there was no doubt that this thing was extraordinary, and must not fall into the hands of 100 Change Star Lord. But as long as I open the bronze coffin, that power will naturally disappear, and he will no longer be a threat to me, 100 Change Star Lord said complacently. Roar. Tian Chanzi let out a roar and attacked 100 Change Star Lord again, who quickly dodged. Tian Chanzi, can you hear me? Looking at Tian Chanzi's crazy appearance, Tang Jing wanted to know what had happened to him. 100 Change Star Lord said that Tian Chanzi was being controlled, but what was controlling him? I want to know all these questions, so I called Tian Chanzi to see if he can answer. However, Tian Chanzi turned a deaf ear and continued to attack 100 Change Star Lord fiercely. Haha, you still want him to answer? He is already being controlled just like a walking corpse. How can he answer your questions? 100 Change Star Lord laughed disdainfully. Tang Jing's heart skipped a beat. The words walking corpse fiercely provoked him. Although he often bickered with Tian Chanzi, the two had deep feelings for each other. If not for Tian Chanzi, Tang Jing would not have everything he had today. He was afraid that he would have failed the college entrance exam, and then exploded and died at the age of 20. Therefore he and Tian Chanzi had saved each other's lives. They were both very important people in each other's lives, and this kind of relationship could not be cut off. Tang Jing suddenly turned to Empyrean Fairy and asked, is there a way for him to recover? Empyrean Fairy also stared at Tian Chanzi and said, didn't 100 Change Star Lord say that as long as we open the bronze coffin, the power in his body will disappear? Then let's open the bronze coffin. Tang Jing took a deep look at the bronze coffin. Although this suggestion was very risky, there was no other way. This was the only way to survive. He was willing to take this risk for Tian Chanzi. 100 Change Star Lord was entangled by Tian Chanzi. Hearing this, his face suddenly changed and his thin body let out a hysterical roar. Don't open the bronze coffin. It's mine. Don't even think about touching it. Tang Jing sneered and said, you can't even protect yourself. What ability do you have to stop us? 100 Change Star Lord was furious and shouted at the giant, I didn't resurrect you to let you watch a good show. Stop them at all costs. Brr. The giant let out a long roar. Although it was still entangled by the black gas, it still rushed toward Empyrean Fairy without hesitation. Just now he had suffered losses from Empyrean Fairy, so this time he was extra careful. Empyrean Fairy did not show any abnormality and slowly landed. Bang. She stepped on the bronze coffin. The black gas on the bronze coffin quickly retreated in all directions, as if it had met its nemesis. Not only Tang Zheng but also Empyrean Fairy stared at her feet in surprise. She was already prepared to fight against the black gas. Now that she was stuck there, the black gas would not hurt her. 100 Change Star-Lord's face suddenly changed and he exclaimed, "Impossible! How did you do this? Who on earth are you?" Tang Zheng laughed and said sarcastically, "Didn't you say that no one could open my bronze coffin? Now it seems that is not necessarily true." 100 Change Star-Lord rolled his eyes and said angrily, "If you want to die, open it." "What do you mean?" Tang Zheng and Empyrean Fairy were stunned and stopped moving subconsciously. "There is something very dangerous inside. Except for me, everyone else will die." 100 Change Star-Lord said solemnly. Tang Zheng and Empyrean Fairy looked at each other and shook their heads at the same time. "We don't believe you. Stop him." 100 Change Star-Lord roared. The giant finally stood up and attacked Empyrean Fairy. The Empyrean Fairy had already figured out the giant's combat strength, so she was not afraid. Her every move made the giant flustered, and the cliff of the canyon shook, causing rocks to fall. 100 Change Star-Lord was burning with anxiety as he looked at the battered and exhausted giant. However, he could do nothing as he looked at the corpses of the demonic beasts and the white bones on the ground. Seeing that the Heaven Monk was closing in again, the 100 Transformation Star-Lord roared, both of his hands pressed down in the air. Bang bang bang, the corpses of the demonic beasts actually exploded, turning into a bloody mist, and the blood quickly gathered towards the 100 Transformation Star-Lord. He grabbed the air with his hands and the blood mist turned into bloody claws. Buff, buff, buff. The bloody claws left many wounds on Tianchanzi's body, and some of them were so deep that his bones could be seen. However, Tianchanzi did not feel anything and continued to attack 100 Change Star-Lord. "If you are courting death. Now, I will use up a lot of my power to defeat you and stop those people." 100 Change Star-Lord made up his mind. Once the bloody claws were formed, their power increased greatly. The sky was filled with bloody claws and Tianchanzi was at a disadvantage. His body was also dyed red. Tang Zheng looked at the scene but there was nothing he could do. He focused on the bronze coffin. Chapter 843. The bronze coffin lay quietly on the ground, surrounded by black gas. Only the place where the Empyrean Fairy stood was free of the black gas. The giant viciously attacked the Empyrean Fairy, forcing her to leave the bronze coffin. Tang Zheng and Linger were the only ones who could move freely. Linger watched from the side. "I'm going to activate it," Tang Zheng said in a deep voice. Linger worriedly warned, "Master, be careful." Tang Zheng nodded his head heavily, but he did not touch the bronze coffin with his hands. Instead, he raised War Soul and pierced it into the gap. Whoosh! The black gas was like a cat that had smelled the fishy smell of fish. It quickly scurried over and directly rushed towards the War Soul sword. Tang Zheng's spirit trembled, he quickly circulated his qi, his true qi surged, his sword qi was abundant, it intertwined with the black qi, they were equally matched. Tang Zheng could clearly feel a bone-chilling power coming from the black qi, causing him to shiver uncontrollably. He gritted his teeth and took a deep breath. He thought to himself, "I don't believe that I can't deal with you." With a sudden burst of strength, the bronze coffin actually loosened a little, and an earth-shattering yin qi seeped out, making Tang Zheng feel as if he had fallen into an endless ice cave. He forced himself to endure the trembling of his soul and muttered to himself, "What's inside? So cold. Could it be a corpse? This prehistoric heavenly tomb is a product of the ancient era. If it really was a corpse, it would have already rotted." No, he immediately remembered the Beast King and Qin Shi Huang. These powerful cultivators had ways to preserve their bodies so there might be a lifelike corpse inside. Xiao Bai sensed Tang Zheng's abnormality and bared his fangs at the bronze coffin as he growled, as if declaring his authority. Then, it opened its little mouth and spat out a stream of flames, which immediately enveloped the bronze coffin. Ah! Tang Zheng was shocked. He didn't expect Xiao Bai to be so bold as to spit fire. Needless to say, as soon as the flames appeared, the bone-chilling feeling disappeared by a lot. The key was that the black gas seemed to have met its nemesis and retreated with whooshing sounds. Tang Zheng suddenly had an idea and said, "You still want to escape? Xiao Bai, trap this black gas." The giant bronze coffin was related to Tianchanzi's life and death, so Tang Zheng couldn't be careless. After giving the order, Xiao Bai spat out a few more balls of flames, trapping all the black gas. The black gas struggled left and right in the flames, but it was unable to break through the defense of the flames. It was like a trapped beast, struggling futilely. Without the restriction of the black qi, Tang Zheng's strength increased greatly. With a ding sound, the War Soul Sword bent slightly and finally opened up a large crack. The flames on the bronze coffin had already disappeared, so Tang Zheng held the coffin lid with both hands and let out a low roar. The coffin lid was as heavy as 1,000 caddies. Rise. Tang Zheng used his strength and the coffin lid moved bit by bit. Stop. Tian Chanzi shouted with all his might. His voice was completely different from usual, giving off a creepy feeling. Before he finished speaking, he had already abandoned the 100-change Star Lord and attacked Tang Zheng. The black gas in his hand changed shape and turned into a long spear. The air surged and automatically divided into 2 rows. The long spear shot towards Tang Zheng's back. Ling hurriedly shouted, "Master, be careful." Then she bravely blocked Tang Zheng's back. Tang Zheng had an idea. He shouted and used all his strength. The War Soul Sword bent to the limit and was about to break. Bang! The coffin lid flew up and hit the cliff with a muffled sound. Seeing that the long spear was about to pierce through Linger's chest, Xiao Bai quickly transformed. His feet stepped on flames and even his body was burning with raging flames. Boom! A monstrous flame wrapped around the long spear. The long spear's attack decreased sharply and stopped in front of Linger, unable to advance any further. Linger's face was filled with determination. Even if the long spear did not stop, she would definitely not retreat half a step. The coffin lid opened and Tian Chanzi let out a blood-curdling scream. The long spear directly exploded and turned into nothingness. No one expected this scene. They could not help but be shocked. Even the 100-change Star Lord was dumbstruck. He stomped his feet hatefully. He actually beat me to it. Tang Zheng could no longer care about the situation behind him. He stretched his neck and looked into the bronze coffin. When he saw the situation inside the coffin, his face changed greatly. His eyes widened and he was flabbergasted. It was as if he had seen a ghost. He took a few steps back before stopping. Everyone looked at his reaction in disbelief. They could not help but mutter in their hearts. What exactly did he see in the bronze coffin to have such a big reaction? Furthermore, it was obvious that he was frightened. Tang Zheng, what's wrong with you? Empyrean Fairy pushed back the giant and asked curiously. Ling also stared at Tang Zheng, wondering why her master had such a big reaction. Even the 100-change Star Lord was not in a hurry to rush over to take a look. He wanted to know what was inside. In fact, he only knew a little about the situation inside the bronze coffin and did not know the details. Last time, when he was on the island nation, he used the Mountain River blood sacrifice array to welcome the return of the Devil clan. Although there were only 100 of them, their cultivations were not weak. Furthermore, they brought him an unexpected news. It turned out that the return of the Devil clan this time was to prepare for the return of the entire Devil clan. Back then, when the Devil God returned, it did not have much of an effect. Therefore, the Devil clan finally found a glimmer of hope this time. It turned out that the Devil clan had accidentally discovered a secret of the Devil clan's ancestor, and that was a huge bronze coffin. This huge bronze coffin was buried in the prehistoric heavenly tomb in the 10,000 huge mountains. There was no reliable evidence as to who was buried in this huge bronze coffin, but one thing was certain. There was a huge secret hidden within, a secret that was enough to change this world. Originally, the 100-change Star Lord did not believe the words of the Devil clan, but after the other party swore and even sent an elite to follow him back to the 10,000 huge mountains, he gradually believed it. As for the Devil clan on that ship, it was just bait. The 100-change Star Lord had long since had a certain understanding of this modern society, and knew that his actions in the island nation could not be hidden from the authorities. Thus, he might as well build a plank road and secretly send those Devil clanes to their deaths, while he brought an elite Devil clanes to quietly return to the 10,000 huge mountains. The two sides worked together and investigated the entire way. In the end, they found this canyon in the prehistoric heavenly tomb. The Devil clan was certain that the bronze coffin was right below. However, legend had it that the bronze coffin was as heavy as Mount Tai. Even the 100-change Star Lord was unable to bring it up by himself. The 100-change Star Lord had raised a question. Why couldn't they just go down to the bottom of the canyon and open the bronze coffin? Why did they have to go through so much trouble to get the bronze coffin out? The Devil clan was clearly prepared and gave a convincing answer. It turned out that there was a mysterious power in the canyon. This power not only protected the bronze coffin, but also imprisoned it. It was as if this was an arrangement made by someone back then. They wanted the bronze coffin to remain silent at the bottom of the canyon, and no one would care about it. If the bronze coffin was opened in the canyon, it would cause a huge reaction. All the people in the canyon would die and not a single one would be left alive. Only by taking the bronze coffin out and losing the restriction of that mysterious power would the true secret of the bronze coffin be discovered, and there would not be any negative reactions. Therefore, when the 100-Change-Star Lord said that he would definitely die after opening the bronze coffin, he was not just trying to scare him. But now that things had come to this, what was done and there was no turning back. Seeing Tang Jing retreat as if he had seen a ghost, the 100-Change-Star Lord also wanted to take a look at what was inside. But when he remembered the instructions of the Devil Clan, he hesitated. Those Devil Clan members had already died at the hands of Tian Chanzi, so they would not be able to see this scene, let alone use this opportunity to let the Devil Clan return. The 100-Change-Star Lord did not care about the demands of the inner demons. Now he only had eyes for the bronze coffin. How could this be? How could this be? Tang Jing muttered to himself as if he was possessed. The Empyrean Fairy and Linger stood on either side of him worriedly. They shook his arm and asked, "What did you see?" Tang Jing turned a deaf ear to them and continued to exclaim, "Too inconceivable, too inconceivable." The 100-Change-Star Lord finally could not take it anymore. His heart felt like it was being clawed by a cat. In a flash, he rushed toward the bronze coffin. The Empyrean Fairy also wanted to rush over, but she was half a beat slower. The 100-Change-Star Lord also stood in the air above the bronze coffin. A pair of big eyes stared at it without blinking. His whole body shook violently and his face became extremely ugly. He muttered to himself, "How could it be me? How could it be me?" The Empyrean Fairy was confused. Finally, she rushed over and took a closer look. A familiar face came into view. There was a person lying in the bronze coffin. She was very lifelike and her face was ruddy. The most inconceivable thing was that she was the Empyrean Fairy. The Empyrean Fairy felt like she was looking into a mirror. Seeing a person who looked exactly like her lying in the bronze coffin, she was afraid that anyone would be stimulated. She was alive and well, so why was she lying in the bronze coffin? Moreover, this bronze coffin had been buried here for many years. If someone had found an identical person and placed her inside, it could not be so coincidental. The Empyrean Fairy shook her head and took a few steps back. She muttered to herself, "Impossible, what is going on?" Tang Jing, the Empyrean Fairy and the 100-Change-Star Lord all had the same reaction. Ling also wanted to go over and see what was going on, but Tang Jing stopped her and said, "Don't go." Ling stared at Tang Jing with her big black eyes and asked, "Master, what is inside that made the three of you have such a big reaction?" Tang Jing swallowed his saliva and hesitated for a long time. Then he said, "There is a person who looks exactly like me inside." Tang Jing suspected that one of them was a celestial who just so happened to look exactly like him. But there was no such coincidence in this world. Ling covered her mouth and cried out in alarm, "Master, you are alive and standing here, how can it be you inside?" Chapter 844. The 9 Heavens Mystical Maiden and the 100 Transformation Star Sovereign both looked as if they had seen a ghost as they stared at Tang Jing without blinking. "You said you were in the bronze coffin?" Tang Jing looked at the two of them blankly and nodded subconsciously. Yes, he saw it clearly. Could it be wrong? The Empyrean Fairy had an idea and asked the 100 Faces Star Lord, "What did you see?" "Myself." The 100 Faces Star Lord hesitated for a moment and said truthfully. The Empyrean Fairy's mouth twitched and muttered, "I also saw myself." Immediately the three of them felt a headache. Why did the three of them see themselves in the bronze coffin? There was clearly only one person lying there, so why were there 3 faces? It was not only the face but every part of the body was exactly the same as them. How could they be wrong? The three of them were deep in thought but they could not figure it out. Tian Chanzi's body was steaming with black gas, making him look extremely sinister. He laughed strangely and said, "I told you not to open the bronze coffin. You are courting death so you can't blame others." Tang Jing stared at Tian Chanzi and said, "100 Faces Star Lord, didn't you say that Tian Chanzi would recover if we open the bronze coffin? Why is he still like this?" The 100 Faces Star Lord was at a loss and said, "How would I know?" That jade-like naughty face coupled with that aggrieved expression was especially confusing. If it was anyone else they would definitely treat him as a harmless child. Tang Jing, however, would not be blinded by this and said, "No matter what is inside, in short, there is a problem." Tian Chanzi said with certainty that they were dead, so how could they just sit there and wait for death? The 100 Faces Star Lord heard this and his face suddenly sank. He waved his small hand and a bloody light rushed towards the bronze coffin. No matter who was inside, he had to make the first move and kill them. Tian Chanzi did not stop him but looked at them with a cold smile. The bloody light rushed into the bronze coffin but nothing happened. The wind was calm and the waves were calm. The silence was a bit excessive. The 100 Faces Starlord's face changed slightly. He was very clear about the power of his attack, but it was like throwing a stone into the sea. There was no reaction at all, not even a ripple. He did not give up and wanted to attack again, but there was a sound from the bronze coffin. Immediately everyone was shocked. Could it be that there was a living thing inside? Tian Chanzi said with a sinister smile, "You are all dead." Their faces were filled with indignation. Were they doomed? It was too early to make a conclusion. Someone in the bronze coffin stood up. There were 3 people. Tang Zheng, the Empyrean Fairy, and the 100 Faces Starlord. The 3 of them looked exactly the same as them. Even the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, who was good at transformation, could not help but feel his eyelids twitch. Just a mere illusion, illusion, illusion. Illusion, 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 illusion. See how? See. He roared loudly and madly attacked the person who looked exactly like him. Bang. He directly attacked his opponent's body, but his opponent didn't move at all. Instead, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he looked at him with an evil aura. Even though the 100 Faces Starlord was experienced and had a strong mind, he could not help but tremble when he saw this. What are you? The 100 Faces Starlord looked at him and smiled. He did not say a word and continued to walk toward him. Faced with this strange situation, the 100 Faces Starlord was furious. He roared, "I don't believe I can't deal with you." In an instant he unleashed all of his skills, and all of his powerful moves were thrown at his opponent. But everything was like a stone sinking into the sea. There was no reaction at all. The other 2 people also walked toward their opponents. The Empyrean Fairy saw herself walking over and subconsciously took a few steps back. She did not attack rashly. Instead, she observed her opponent's actions, hoping to figure out what was going on and find a flaw. But she found that it was almost wishful thinking. She did not find any flaw. On the other hand, although Tang Zheng was panicking when he saw himself getting closer and closer, that trace of panic was unknowingly suppressed. He narrowed his eyes and stared at the other party. He found that the closer the other party got, the blurrier it became. When he was only a meter away from Tang Zheng, he could not see his appearance clearly. He could not tell that it was himself. What's going on? Tang Zheng subconsciously turned his head to look at the other 2. Their reactions were completely different from his. The 100 Faces Starlord was attacking relentlessly, while the Empyrean Fairy was dodging. She did not want to come into direct contact with herself. Only he was the quietest, especially when he saw the blurry image. He was sure that although he did not know what was going on, his situation was completely different from the other 2. Something must have gone wrong. The blurry shadow continued to walk toward him. Tang Zheng could no longer sit still and watch. The war soul in his hand blazed. He slashed at the opponent. Oh! A sharp roar rang out, and the shadow began to transform rapidly. Why aren't you affected? Tang Zheng's heart moved. Could it be that this was the voice of that terrifying thing? It did sound strange, but when he looked at the others, they did not have the slightest reaction. It was as if they did not hear this voice at all. Strange. Tang Zheng did not know why he was not affected. Instead, he said with a firm expression, "What exactly are you? How can you bewitch people?" Tang Zheng could already confirm that the 3 of them saw him in the bronze ball was an illusion. It was just that the illusion was too realistic. Even the 100 Faces Starlord could not distinguish it. But why was it that when the other party walked out of the bronze coffin, especially when they were closer to him, the illusion did not work? Tang Zheng was puzzled, but without a doubt this was a good sign. Without the influence of the illusion, he could wholeheartedly deal with the other party. He could still see the predicament of the 100 Faces Starlord and the Empyrean Fairy, so he loudly reminded them not to panic. However, he found that no one could hear him. It was as if he was isolated from the world. Although he could clearly see everything around him, it was as if he was not a person of this world. It was close at hand but far away at the end of the world. What kind of magic did you use? Tang Zheng angrily asked. The shadow circled around Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng sternly waited, not daring to slack off. He tightly gripped the war soul in his hand, his palms slowly dripping with cold sweat. Finally, the shadow opened its mouth and said in realization, "I finally understand. You do not have inner demons, so you are not affected. Inner demons. Tang Zheng's head moved. He remembered the mirror he saw on the 4th floor of the Langya Pavilion. Wasn't the exorcist mirror an item to expel the inner demons? In the Langya Pavilion, his inner demons had been dispelled, so his cultivation speed was faster and he could focus more. However, he did not expect that there would be a pleasant surprise. Even the 100 Faces Star-Lord and the Empyrean Fairy were affected. He was the only one who was slightly affected at first, but in the end he was completely fine. In this point he surpassed the 2 experts. Who exactly are you? Why don't you have inner demons? The shadow asked incredulously. Tang Zheng sneered, and who are you? You can actually control people's inner demons? Ah. A series of strange laughter sounded. Who am I? I am the person everyone is afraid of. That's why they imprisoned me here. What a bunch of cowards. Who imprisoned you? You wouldn't know even if I told you. If I see them again I will definitely tear them into pieces. No, I will let them kill each other. I will watch the show from the side. The shadow laughed wildly. Tang Zheng's heart jumped. This shadow spoke mysteriously, but it didn't seem to be deliberately mystifying, which meant that he was definitely not an ordinary ruthless character. Moreover, this prehistoric heavenly tomb had existed since ancient times, and had already existed for tens of thousands of years. Then this shadow must have been imprisoned here even earlier. There were many experts in that era, so he couldn't guess who had imprisoned him. You keep saying that others are cowards, but until now you still haven't revealed your true face. You only know how to brag. Do you dare to say your name? Tang Zheng provoked. Who am I? Of course I won't forget, and there's no need to be mysterious. As long as they hear my name, everyone will be scared silent, or even scared out of their wits. The shadow said confidently. Then tell me. Listen up, I am the most powerful person in the world. Inner demons. The shadow said firmly. Inner demons? Tang Zheng was startled. Are you scared? The inner demons were proud of themselves. Tang Zheng wasn't scared at all, he was confused. He reacted as if he had just woken up from a dream and said, Tisk, you're scared. You think too highly of yourself. What? You're not scared? Have you never heard of my illustrious name? The inner demons was very surprised and shouted. Forgive me for my shallow knowledge, but I have never heard of your name. Tang Zheng used the exorcist mirror to expel his own inner demons, but he had never heard of any expert in this world called inner demons. Impossible, my inner demons is very famous. Everyone in the world knows about it, how could you not have heard of it? The inner demons were unconvinced and said angrily. Tang Zheng snorted disdainfully, you're just bragging about yourself. Nonsense, my inner demons don't need to brag about themselves. If I wasn't so powerful, how could I be imprisoned here? Humph, everyone has their inner demons and I can control their inner demons and thus control everyone. Do you think they won't be afraid of me? Tang Zheng's head dropped. This person's words were so convincing that it didn't seem like he was lying. It was true that everyone had their inner demons, but to control someone's inner demons was a bit of a fantasy. But there was nothing absolute in this world and everything was possible. If this person could really control the inner demons, then he could indirectly control everyone. This was indeed a heaven-defying ability, and this person was a heaven-defying existence. He wasn't like other experts. Other experts could destroy others, but they couldn't completely control others. This person could control others and use them for himself. Chapter 845. You're the weirdest. You don't have inner demons and aren't affected by me. I shouldn't let a person like you live in this world. The inner demons said fiercely. I don't have inner demons in my body. You can't control me, so how are you going to kill me? Aha, there's no need for me to do it myself. If someone does it, as long as I control the 2 of them, do you think you can still survive with your cultivation? The inner demons said proudly. Tang Zheng's head trembled. It was indeed so, as long as either the Empyrean Fairy or the 100 Faces Star-Lord fell into the control of the inner demons, then Tang Zheng would definitely not be able to get anything out of it. Seeing that the 2 of them were not in a good situation, Tang Zheng knew that he could no longer stand by and watch. The first thing he had to do was to break through this strange illusion. Break for me. Tang Zheng bellowed, holding onto the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrow in his hands. The bowstring trembled, and the shooting sun arrow shot out into the sky. Heaven-shocking bow, shooting sun arrow. The inner demons actually recognized the 2 divine weapons at a glance and exclaimed. Tang Zheng laughed coldly, only to hear a shattering sound. The scene in front of his eyes changed, creating circles of ripples. The shooting sun arrow unimpeded struck the rock wall, causing rocks to fly everywhere. The scene in front of him changed, and Tang Jing actually realized that the Hundred Faces Star Lord was already on the verge of death, and was actually attacking the air non-stop. And the Empyrean Fairy was also continuously dodging. There was no one in front of him. There was no second Hundred Faces Star Lord or Empyrean Fairy in this canyon, and even the shadow in front of Tang Jing had disappeared without a trace. Tang Jing was flabbergasted, so everything from before was an illusion, created by the inner demons controlling people's hearts. So no matter how the Hundred Faces Star Lord attacked, it would not have any effect. This was because he was attacking the air. As for the Empyrean Fairy, no matter how she dodged, that imaginary self would always follow her like a shadow, because it was an illusion constructed by her heart. Tang Jing's head trembled. Looking at this scene, he was deeply shocked. No wonder the inner demons were so confident. He really did have the strength. Even experts like the Hundred Faces Star Lord and the Empyrean Fairy had only taken a glance inside the bronze coffin, and they had been tricked by him. As for Ling and Little White, they looked at this scene with curiosity. They didn't look into the bronze coffin, so they weren't affected. You people. Inner demons. You people. The inner demons. You will suffer the consequences of your own actions. Everything was happening right under his nose. He was powerless. From the moment the bronze coffin was opened, he could do nothing. His power was quickly draining away. Suddenly he looked at the culprit of all this, Tang Jing. If he had not opened the coffin without permission, then none of this would have happened. But when he looked at Tang Jing, he was shocked and shouted, "You? Why are you not affected?" Tang Jing looked at Tian Chanzi with a complicated expression and said, "Tian Chanzi, get better quickly. I am Tang Jing." Tian Chanzi looked at Tang Jing coldly and said, "Tang Jing, why are you not affected by the inner demons?" "My inner demons have been eliminated. They can't affect me." Tian Chanzi stared at Tang Jing in disbelief and exclaimed, "The inner demons have been eliminated? How did you do it?" Tang Jing did not answer and said, "You are not Tian Chanzi. Why did you take over his body? Leave him quickly. You still have the time to care about him. Your top priority is to deal with the inner demons. If the inner demons appear, not only will you die but the world will also be in chaos," Tian Chanzi said solemnly. Tang Jing said that Tian Chanzi's words were reasonable. They had to deal with the inner demons first. Otherwise, if they let him control anyone and escape, then it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. It was almost impossible to find him. However, whether it was the Hundred Faces Star Lord or the Empyrean Fairy, he was no match for them. So he turned his eyes and stared at the bronze coffin. He rushed toward the bronze coffin with big strides. Tian Chanzi looked at his actions and did not stop him. He sighed in his heart. Success or failure depended on this one move. If there was no Tang Jing, an anomaly without the inner demons, this would be a dead end. No one would be able to escape. With such an anomaly, there might be a ray of hope. "Master, be careful." Linger was scared stiff. The changes in the scene were beyond her imagination. Tang Jing nodded slightly. Just as he was about to rush to the bronze coffin, a huge body blocked his way. A giant. He actually came to block Tang Jing and howled. He was not affected, so he was still anxious to carry out the Hundred Faces Star Lord's order to not let Tang Jing get close to the bronze coffin. "Get out of my way." Tang Jing hysterically roared. Time was of the essence and could not be delayed, but this big guy still blocked his way without hesitation. He was really unlucky. The giant was indifferent. Instead he kicked at him. The wind was biting cold and a huge pressure fell from the sky. Tang Jing was angry and anxious. He drew his bow and shot the shooting sun arrow directly at the giant's foot. Blood splattered. The shooting sun arrow directly penetrated the giant's foot. The giant was in pain. He howled and staggered back. Tang Jing took advantage of this good opportunity. His body flashed and he went around the giant, arriving in front of the bronze coffin. Indeed, there was a person lying in the bronze coffin. This person's face was ruddy and handsome. He was a middle-aged uncle whose appearance was not inferior to the Hundred Faces Star Lord. His originally tightly shut eyes suddenly opened, and his pair of eyes seemed to have a soul-sucking demonic power as he stared straight at Tang Jing. Tang Jing felt as if his soul was about to leave his body. He hurriedly channeled his energy and guarded his mind. Although he did not have the inner demons, his heart was still stirred by the other's eyes. It was enough to show the other's strength. "You want to kill me?" The inner demon stood up. He was dressed in ancient clothing. His black hair fluttered in the wind. The corner of his mouth hung an incomparably mysterious smile. So this is the true face of the inner demons. Tang Jing said fiercely. I do want to kill you. You intimidate people's souls. You must die. The inner demons laughed disapprovingly. If I was so easy to kill, then they could have just killed me back then. Why would they go through so much trouble to imprison me here? Tang Jing's head thumped. The inner demons' words were reasonable. The ancient people were so powerful that they could only imprison each other. This meant that the inner demons could not be casually killed. But seeing the inner demons in front of him and the War Soul Sword could pierce his chest at any time, Tang Jing felt that he could not let go of this great opportunity. The Empyrean Fairy was hanging by a thread. If he did not make a move, then the inner demons would control her. No matter what, this was a result that Tang Jing could not accept. What are you waiting for? Kill him with one strike. Tian Chanzi urged. The inner demons looked at Tian Chanzi with a smile and said, You are a remnant soul left behind by that person. Now you are attached to this person's body in an attempt to stop them from opening the bronze coffin. Unfortunately, you still failed. Tian Chanzi's expression kept changing. He did not say a word. The inner demon looked around and stared at the deep and terrifying cliff, saying, You used the place with the densest evil chi to imprison me. It's a pity that the evil chi has consumed a lot of my power over the years. But as long as I come out, this world will still be mine. Tang Jing muttered in his heart. Previously, the 100 Faces Star Lord said that he had to pull the bronze coffin up to open it. Now it seemed that pulling it up was more serious than opening the coffin at the bottom of the canyon. Could it be that the 100 Faces Star Lord was deceived by the demon clan? The demon clan did not tell them the truth. Once the bronze coffin was pulled up, without the suppression of the baleful yin chi, the inner demons would become stronger. This was equivalent to helping the inner demons. The 100 Faces Star Lord was indeed deceived by the demon clan. The demon clan was incomparably cunning. Although the 100 Faces Star Lord helped them return, how could they easily believe him? Therefore they used a fact and not a lie to deceive him. It was a pity that the demon clan's luck was not good. Before they could open the coffin, they were all killed by Tian Chanzi. Of course, the demon clan knew the power of the inner demons. This was a very risky operation, but the demon clan had another plan. The demon clan planned to all submit to the inner demons and follow this powerful new master to expand their territory. It would not take long for the entire world to belong to the demon clan. This was a huge sacrifice. However, the demon clan in the sky beyond sky was not as strong as before. They had no choice but to make this plan. However, as long as the demon clan's power and glory could be guaranteed, they were willing to worship the inner demons as their masters. It had to be said that the demon clan did not play by the rules. They were willing to make such a huge sacrifice. Of course, once they succeeded, the rewards would be huge. Unifying the world was a magnificent feat that countless generations of the demon clan had not been able to achieve. If Tang Jing knew the whole story, he would probably be amazed by the boldness and strangeness of the current master of the demon clan. Of course, the demon clan was dead and no one knew about this. Looking at the complacent inner demons, Tang Jing gnashed his teeth and said, Why are you talking so much nonsense? You think I don't dare to kill you, right? Then you are completely wrong. Go to hell. Tang Jing stabbed out with his sword. No. A cry of alarm came from Tian Chanzi's mouth. This was Tian Chanzi's original voice. Tang Jing was startled, but it was too late. The War Soul Sword pierced the inner demon's chest. Fresh blood gushed out and dyed the War Soul Sword red. The inner demons did not resist or even dodge. Tang Jing found it inconceivable. The inner demons were so strong they should at least have some dodging movements. Like a puppet, they allowed the War Soul Sword to pierce their chest. This was too strange. Tang Jing had a bad premonition. Why didn't you dodge? The inner demons said indifferently, My combat ability is not strong. I am inferior to you. How can I dodge? I might as well take your sword. Tang Jing scratched his head, but he could not guess the inner demon's plan. If you don't fight back, won't you die? Chapter 846. The inner demons did not close his eyes, and his smile made Tang Jing very uneasy. Just as he was about to pull out Battle Soul, he found that the inner demon's hands were firmly holding onto the sword, and blood flowed down his palm. Tang Jing, you fell into his trap, quickly let go. Tian Chanzi's voice sounded again, this time it was still Tian Chanzi himself. Obviously, the remnant soul attached to his body was weakening, and he was worried about Tang Jing's safety, so he temporarily seized control of his body. Tang Jing glanced at Tian Chanzi from the corner of his eyes, and found that his face was full of regret. Suddenly Tianqianzi's face changed, and he became incomparably cold. He had lost control of his body again, and he said resolutely, "Tang Jing, you don't have the inner demons, so you have a chance to live. Remember, guard your mind and don't let him control you." "Ah, do you think it's that easy?" The inner demons laughed disapprovingly, and his hands let go of Battle Soul and fell straight down. His eyes were wide open and there was no sign of life. Tang Jing did not understand what was going on, but his mind suddenly trembled, and he felt that his soul was out of his body, as if this body was no longer his, and his original soul was about to be squeezed out. He quickly remembered Tianqianzi's warning, and quickly circulated his energy, guarding his mind. "Ah, do you think this is enough to shut me out?" A voice sounded in Tang Jing's mind, making him quiver, and he almost shouted in fear. Fortunately, Tianqianzi had been in his mind for a long time, and he had experience, so he was not scared to the point of being at a loss. It turned out that the inner demons did not die, but ran into his body. No matter what method he used, in short, Tang Jing was in big trouble. "Now you should know why no one dares to kill me, right?" the inner demons said proudly. Tang Jing suddenly realized that it was no wonder that he was only imprisoned here and not killed. It turned out that killing him had to pay such a big price. It was easy to destroy his body, but his soul would attach to the body of the person who killed him, thus taking control of the person's body. This was not killing the inner demons but sacrificing oneself, so no one was willing to take this risk. "Looks like you're a smart person. You've already guessed it. It's very easy to kill me and there are many ways. But no matter what method you use, it doesn't matter whether it's long range or short range. As long as you kill me, my soul will possess his body and take over his body. Tell me, is there anyone in this world who would sacrifice themselves to do such a stupid thing? Moreover, this can't really kill me, just let me change my body." The inner demon's voice was full of pride, mockery and ridicule, which made Tang Jing shudder. It turned out that the inner demons were so powerful, no wonder Tianqianzi said that it would be a huge catastrophe if he released him. He was an immortal monster, and even if his body died, his soul could be passed on indefinitely. How did such a heaven-defying existence come into being? Tang Jing was really curious and had an impulse to find the source, but now he could not even protect himself. "Your body is not bad, I am very satisfied. In the future, I will let your body witness my glory, you should feel honored." "It's an honor, you big-headed ghost." Tang Jing could not help but scold. "You want to take over my body and control it? No way, my inner demons have been eliminated, let's see what you can do." The inner demons have been eliminated. If it was like what they did, I really could not do anything to you, but you are courting death by killing me, so let me take over your body. Without the inner demons, I can still control you. Tang Jing felt a chill in his heart. Even a wise man would make a mistake. He only wanted to save people, but he did not expect that he would lose his advantage, and the inner demons would take advantage of him. He subconsciously looked at Tianqianzi. Perhaps he was also aware of this, but he still urged him to kill the inner demons. This was to let him take a risk, because if he could not defeat the inner demons, then the inner demons could get away with it. If he was lucky enough to suppress the inner demons, then he would have a chance to live. Tang Jing did not know whether to laugh or cry, but now there was no way to escape, so he could only fight with all his might to see if he could fight for that glimmer of hope. "I advise you not to waste your efforts, otherwise, it is not a wise decision to try endless torture in the last moments of your life," the inner demons advised. Tang Jing coldly snorted, "How can I be scared by your few words? Until the last moment I will not give up so easily. It is still not clear who will win. The ignorant are not afraid. Then I will show you my power and let you have a taste of what it feels like to live a life worse than death." After the inner demons finished speaking, Tang Jing felt a pain that he had never experienced before in his mind, and then it spread to his limbs, bones, and 8 extraordinary meridians. It was as if his soul was being pulled out of his body. This kind of pain was not only deep in his bones but also deep in his soul. The pain from his soul made his whole body tremble, and with a plop, he fell to the ground, twitching non-stop. Ling Er saw this scene and turned pale with fright. She quickly guarded him and asked anxiously, "Master, how are you, Master?" Heaven Monk had mixed feelings as he advised, "Miss, you don't have to be anxious, everything has its own destiny. If he really obtained that glimmer of hope, then he would have saved this world. Otherwise, all of you will be destroyed together with him, it's just a matter of time." Ling Er suddenly raised her head and stared at Tianqianzi. "I am willing to die for Master." "Haha, your courage is commendable, but this is not a problem that can be solved by dying in his place. Don't worry, if he fails you will soon die and you will be reunited. Tian Chanzi laughed strangely. Get out of my body. Another voice burst out from Tian Chanzi's throat. You finally can't wait anymore? Don't worry, I am just borrowing your body, I will not hurt you. The inner demons are the most important. I will not give up until I see the final result. I have guarded the bronze coffin for so many years, and I thought that everything would be peaceful, that the inner demons and I would disappear in the vast river of history. I did not expect that the situation would be disturbed by you people, so if there are any serious consequences, it will be your own fault. But you should not harm Tang Zheng, he is innocent. Since he does not have inner demons, if he did not kill the inner demons, then he would not be in danger, the real Tian Chanzi retorted. Haha, maybe this is the will of the heavens to let him, a person without inner demons, appear here. This is his destiny, he cannot escape, I am just following orders. What a glib-tongued nonsense. Ling Er looked at Tian Chanzi talking to himself and almost broke down. Tears flowed out of her eyes, and she looked at her master who was lying on the ground in pain and started crying. Squeak squeak. Xiao Bai also circled around Tang Zheng, trying to think of a solution, but there was nothing he could do. His eyes were full of worry. As for the Empyrean Fairy and the 100 Faces Star-Lord, they were almost exhausted. They were still trapped in the illusion, fighting or hiding from themselves. The giant's tall body was just a decoration. He was at a loss, looking at everything in a daze. Although he was big, his brain was not very good. The cold wind blew, and the bottom of the canyon was very strange. If an ordinary person saw this scene, they would be scared silly. Tang Zheng was still twitching and struggling. The muscles on his face were almost twisted together, and he even looked a little ferocious. Inside his body, a battle that could not be seen was silently going on. Back and forth, it was a battle of slaughter, and the battlefield itself was suffering from all kinds of torment. But Tang Zheng was still firmly holding on to his last trace of consciousness. Although he was forced back step by step, he still did not give up. Don't struggle in vain. You are not my match. Let go and willingly accept all of this. The inner demon's voice seemed to have a magical power, guiding Tang Zheng patiently. Tang Zheng clenched his teeth, refusing to compromise. He constantly circulated his energy and true qi flowed through his body. Only then was he able to maintain his body's vitality and prevent himself from completely collapsing. If I didn't want to take over your body, perhaps I could have kept you as my servant. That's because you really do have character. It's no wonder you have such a cultivation base at such a young age. Even in the entire world, your talent is one of the best. Oh, that's not right. You're actually a celestial. The 9 Yang Saint body. Ah, I've really picked up a treasure. This talent is 1 in 1,000 years. I've heard there are also many mysterious profundities. Once I take over your body, I'll slowly discover them. The inner demons acted as if they had discovered a new continent and became excited. With this body of yours, my shortcomings will be made up for. My physical body's strength will greatly increase. In the future, no one will be able to kill me. That way I'll be even safer. After all, every time I take over someone's body, it's not a simple matter. The inner demon's endless chatter caused Tang Zheng's heart to sink to the bottom. He was the one directly involved, so he had the deepest feeling. He had no choice but to multitask. On one hand, he had to resist the torturous pain of his body. On the other, he had to resist the inner demon's attack on his soul. Tang Zheng had already been forced back step by step. The inner demons had already reached his heart. That beating heart and rapidly flowing blood was Tang Zheng's final fortress. If he allowed the inner demons to invade his heart, then he would truly be defeated. There would be no turning back. His soul would disappear and his life would truly come to an end. I can already see the heart. This heart is truly powerful. I can feel its surging life force. This is the heart I want. The heart of my inner demons should be this powerful, ha ha ha. Don't be delusional. This is mine. Don't even think about taking it away. Tang Zheng retorted. Haha, let's see how you'll protect it. As soon as the inner demons finished speaking, a mysterious energy rushed toward the heart. It attempted to wrap around the heart and attack it. Tang Zheng resisted with all his might, but he was forced back step by step. In the end, a strand of the inner demon's soul broke through Tang Zheng's defenses and rushed into the heart with unstoppable momentum. In an instant, all of Tang Zheng's defenses collapsed. His heart was firmly occupied by the inner demons. Chapter 847. Losing control of his heart, Tang Zheng screamed in pain. He felt his soul leaving his body. The inner demon's arrogant laughter was extremely ear-piercing. Huh. Why can't I completely occupy this heart? Suddenly the inner demon's voice sounded again. It was bewildered. What's wrong with your heart? The inner demon's voice suddenly rose and screamed. Although Tang Jing felt very uncomfortable, he was not scared out of his wits. That trace of sobriety made him realize that the situation had taken a turn for the better. Heart. Could it be that Chi Yu's heart was working? For a long time, Chi Yu's heart did not respond. Tang Jing almost forgot that his heart was Chi Yu's heart. Chi Yu's heart was extremely mysterious. It had helped him to escape danger many times. Chi Yu's heart, if you can really fight against the inner demons, then quickly show yourself. Otherwise I'm going to die. As if it had heard his thoughts, Chi Yu's heart began to beat rapidly. A mysterious force surged out of the heart. What's wrong with this heart? The mental devil shrieked at the top of its lungs. Are you trying to swallow me? Dream on. The inner demons had never encountered such a situation. In the past, he had taken over other people's bodies to extend his life. But everything happened naturally without any obstacles. This time, because Tang Jing did not have the inner demons, there were many obstacles in the beginning. Now they had broken through his defenses and entered his heart. He originally thought that he had succeeded, but now he realized that it was too early to be happy. There was still a mysterious force that firmly locked him in place. This force was somewhat familiar to him, but also somewhat fearful. I must have seen this force somewhere before. It's been too long. I can't remember it at the moment. Let me think. I must remember. The inner demons talked to himself. I remember now. Chi Yu, this power is very similar to Chi Yu's power. The inner demons suddenly realized. I was wondering how this person with such a weak cultivation could resist me. It turns out that he has the heart of Chi Yu. Back then, Chi Yu was also a celestial. That's why only this Tang Jing is able to control Chi Yu's heart. Inner demons, you actually want to compete with me? A dignified voice suddenly sounded. Tang Jing shivered. This was the first time he had heard this voice. Just by listening to it, he felt an indescribable pressure. If it was an ordinary person, they would have knelt on the ground with a thud. Tang Jing gritted his teeth as he listened to the two voices in his body. He felt that it was a bit absurd, and he was also a bit scared. It turned out that Chi Yu's heart was not an inanimate object. It actually had a consciousness. This was a hidden force that he had not sensed. Now that he thought about it, at the critical moment, Chi Yu's heart had controlled his body. This was actually an extremely dangerous matter. Since Chi Yu's heart could control him for a moment, then perhaps it could control him for a lifetime. Wasn't he being possessed? What was the difference between this and being possessed by the inner demons? It turned out that there was a ticking time bomb hidden in his body, but he was muddle-headed and did not know about it. His heart was ice-cold as if he had fallen into a bottomless abyss. This Chi Yu's heart had always been hidden. Just why? His mind was a mess. For a moment he could not figure out the reason. He could only quietly listen to the conversation between the two voices, hoping to gain something. Chi Yu, I have yet to seek revenge for the past. I never thought that I would meet you again today. I thought that I would never have the chance to seek revenge in this lifetime. Now that I have the chance, I will devour you. Haha, the famous Chi Yu will also die in my hands. This is a great honor. The inner demons laughed wildly. Back then, when I joined forces with the Yellow Emperor, I did not kill you. Instead, I imprisoned you. What a huge mistake, I actually let you live to the end. The Chi Yu's heart said. He kill me? Do you dare? You joined forces with the Yellow Emperor, but you could not do anything to me. All you could do was imprison me. Does this show how afraid you are of death? The inner demons snorted. Tang Jing was shocked. It turned out that the people who imprisoned the inner demons were Chi Yu and the Yellow Emperor. In other words, before the Battle of Zhuolu, Chi Yu and the Yellow Emperor were not sworn enemies. They even joined forces to fight against the inner demons. Perhaps something happened later that led to the war between the two great masters and the two tribes. Even if I am afraid of death, I will not be afraid of you. Inner demons, I could not deal with you back then, but things are different now. Do you think that I can't deal with you? The inner demons sneered. How can you deal with me? Back then we all had inner demons. Even if we used all kinds of methods to expel the inner demons and suppress the inner demons, in the end, the inner demons were not completely expelled. Therefore we would be at a great disadvantage against you. But now the owner of this body does not have a trace of the inner demons. With this condition, do you still think that you are my match? The inner demons fell silent. The atmosphere became a little heavy. Suddenly the inner demons said, I admit that what you said is reasonable, but you are only a remnant soul of the Chi Yu from back then. You are no longer as powerful as before. Otherwise, why would you hide in this young man's body instead of directly occupying it? Therefore don't boast too early. The outcome of the battle is not yet known. Tang Jing fell to the bottom of the valley. It seemed that the Qiyu's heart really wanted to possess him, but now it was not strong enough. He thought that obtaining the heart of the Qiyu was a great opportunity, but now it seemed that it was not an opportunity, but a bomb that could explode at any time. No, I can't just sit and wait for death. If the inner demons win, then I will have no chance to live. If the inner demons lose, I must guard against the heart of the Qiyu and think of ways to deal with it or destroy it. Tang Jing made up his mind and began to think about how to deal with the heart of the Qiyu. There was no doubt that as long as he destroyed the remnant soul of the Qiyu, he would be safe. As for the heart of the Qiyu, he could not kill it as well. If he did, then he would not be able to live. Since you don't want to give up, then I will let you know how powerful I am. After the heart of the Qiyu finished speaking, an invisible force immediately wrapped around the inner demons. Tang Jing only felt that the scene in front of him changed. The valley disappeared and so did everyone else. He had actually magically arrived at a battlefield. On the battlefield, banners were fluttering and dark clouds were pressing down. The two sides of the battle had already set up their chariots and horses. Under the command of two generals riding mighty strange beasts, both sides charged at each other. This is definitely not a normal battle in ancient times, and it is not a scene from a movie. It is too realistic, too shocking, and no special effects can compare to it. The two sides of the battle were not only humans but also demonic beasts. Moreover, the mounts of the humans were very strange and extraordinary. They were all demonic beasts. Most demonic beasts were violent by nature. These people could actually tame demonic beasts, which showed how powerful they were. In addition, there were also giants. The giants were hundreds of meters tall, but they were not invincible on the battlefield. Some of them were even directly killed by some normal humans. Of course, there were two people who attracted the most attention on the battlefield. These two people were at the very front, and they were the generals of both sides. They were both extraordinarily powerful individuals, and with just a glance, people would feel reverence in their hearts. Some even prostrated themselves on the ground. The battle between these two people could be said to be earth-shattering. The earth cracked under their attacks, turning into valleys, mountains into plains, and plains into bottomless pits. This was simply the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. Tang Jing's breathing couldn't help but quicken. Compared to these people, his own ability was simply not enough. He was afraid that in a few rounds he would die on the battlefield. The cycle of the sun and the moon, day and night alternated, but the battle still did not stop. In the end, after an unknown amount of time, one side was finally defeated and gradually retreated. In order to buy time for his clansmen to retreat, the general of that side resolutely resisted the enemy's overwhelming attacks by himself. In the end, a portion of his clansmen finally escaped, and he died of exhaustion. His heart was dug out, and although it left his body, it was still beating non-stop. Tang Jing felt a pain in his heart, and the illusion in front of him disappeared. He suddenly realized that this battle might have really happened in history. It was the famous Battle of Zhuolu. The two generals who had the power to destroy the world were Qiyu and the Yellow Emperor. The person who was defeated and had his heart dug out was Qiyu, and that heart was Qiyu's heart. However, why was he seeing a battle from tens of thousands of years ago for no reason? He was like a bystander, clearly watching the earth-shattering battle. His heart stirred. All of this was probably related to Qiyu's heart and the inner demons. What happened to these two guys? Tang Jing suddenly remembered that he did not hear their voices. Everything was eerily silent. However, the pain in his body seemed to have disappeared. Could it be that the inner demons had been eliminated? Before he could rejoice, the inner demon's voice sounded. It was hysterical and abnormally angry. Qiyu, you damn bastard. You didn't kill me back then, and now you actually used this youth's body to defeat me. I can't accept this. Inner demons, you're really lucky that I didn't completely kill you. Qiyu's remnant soul was also unwilling. Haha, you want to completely kill me? Do you have the ability? Back then, you and the Yellow Emperor couldn't completely kill me even when you joined forces, much less now. If it wasn't for this youth, you would have been devoured by me. How would you have the right to speak? Tang Jing listened to the two's argument, but his body did not feel anything strange. He could not help but be curious and asked, "What's going on? Why did I see the scene of the Battle of Zhuolu just now?" The inner demons laughed. Just now, Qiyu lost his mind and naturally produced the scene of the Battle of Zhuolu. I finally understand why he lost to the Yellow Emperor. It's retribution. When he joined forces with the Yellow Emperor to deal with me, he never thought that he would be defeated by the Yellow Emperor one day. Ah! Shut up! Qiyu shouted angrily. Chapter 848. Tang Jing was confused. I defeated the inner demons? What do you mean? The inner demons seemed to have seen through Tang Jing's thoughts and said, You don't believe it, do you? Then I'll tell you the truth. Qiyu has the inner demons, so not only you, but he also fell into the illusion. Moreover, his murderous intent and resentment were very strong. If you didn't have the inner demons, you wouldn't have been confused by the illusion and controlled by it. You wouldn't have been angry and fell into the illusion and naturally withdrew. Once you withdrew from the illusion, you also withdrew with Qiyu, so you saved him and defeated me. Tang Jing didn't quite understand, but one thing was certain, and that was that he didn't have the inner demons, and it did play a huge role. Of course, Qiyu also played a role because Qiyu's heart resisted the inner demons. In fact, the hearts of Tang Jing and Qiyu were like two locks. Both locks had to be opened at the same time for the inner demons to occupy Tang Jing's body. Otherwise, no matter which lock he opened, he wouldn't be able to occupy Tang Jing's body, which doomed him to failure. However, even if Qiyu wanted to completely kill the inner demons, he couldn't do it. After the two of them fought and tested each other's strength, they simply stopped attacking. The inner demons were very patient and carefully explained to Tang Jing. He finally understood the whole story. He couldn't help but be secretly amazed. But he was also very distressed because since the inner demons and Qiyu couldn't do anything to each other, didn't that mean that there would be two more souls in his body? He had already experienced the feeling of Tianquanzi living in his body, and now he had so many secrets, he really didn't want the inner demons and Qiyu to know. Why are you living in my body? Why are you leaving my body? Tang Jing said indignantly. I can't bear to leave your body. Who knows when I'll be able to take over your body? Celestial 9-yang Saint body, that's a 1 in 10,000 physiques. How could I give it up? Laughed the inner demons. Qiyu said, My heart and Qiyu's heart are one. If you want me to leave, then take out Qiyu's heart. Tang Jing rolled his eyes speechlessly. His own heart had long been swallowed by Qiyu's heart and fused into one. If his heart was dug out, how could he live? Therefore these two would never leave his body no matter what. Tang Jing scratched his head in distress. Why am I so miserable? He cried. Young man, I, the famous inner demons, am living in your body because I think highly of you. You don't know what's good for you, said the inner demons in a bad mood. Shut up. Tang Jing didn't have a good temper. No matter how great the other side's background was, he wasn't afraid. As soon as he said, shut up, the inner demons really didn't say anything. Tang Jing clicked his tongue in wonder. How obedient. Now I'll have much more peace. Tang Jing, you. Qiyu also seemed to have something to say. Tang Jing felt a lingering fear. Qiyu's remnant soul was like a ticking time bomb. Hearing his voice, he couldn't help but shiver. You shut up too. As expected, Qiyu's voice also disappeared. Without these two voices buzzing in his ears, Tang Jing felt much more relaxed. Hey, why are they so obedient? I said shut up and they didn't even say half a word. Suddenly he realized something strange and asked, Hey, why aren't you two talking? Are you mute? There was still no reply. This made him feel incredulous. Could it be that something had happened just now? So they couldn't talk? These were two souls. Tang Jing couldn't observe what had happened to them. He couldn't help but recall the previous scene. He suddenly slapped his forehead and his eyes lit up. Could it be that I said shut up so they can't talk? Although this idea was ridiculous, it was the only explanation. If that was the case, then he had the initiative and wouldn't be controlled by these two powerful souls. He could even control them to a certain extent. Open your mouth. He had a flash of inspiration and said, Phew, I'm suffocating. Young man, what did you do to stop me from talking? The inner demons asked angrily. Qiyu was also shocked and asked, Tang Jing, how did you do it? Tang Jing's heart was in turmoil. He never thought that a blind cat would meet a dead mouse. He was actually right, he could really control these two souls. The inner demons were still angrily questioning, How dare you tell me to shut up? I'm a dignified inner demon. No one has ever dared to speak to me with such an attitude and tone. You're the first. I'll make you regret it for the rest of your life. Inner demons, shut your stinky mouth, Tang Jing scolded impatiently. There was dead silence. The inner demon's voice disappeared. Tang Jing couldn't help but feel that it was very interesting. However, in Qiyu's heart, this was a very serious matter. Tang Jing's performance was far beyond his expectations. How did he do it? Even he was controlled by him? Tang Jing, what's the matter with you? Qiyu still didn't give up and asked. Tang Jing rolled his eyes. How would I know? You're Qiyu. You're experienced and knowledgeable. Why don't you analyze it? Although he had seen how powerful Qiyu was in the illusion, he was now only a remnant soul. Moreover, he was living in Tang Jing's body and hadn't shown it. This was very strange. Tang Jing couldn't help but suspect that Qiyu had ulterior motives. He was probably plotting something. Therefore he naturally didn't treat Qiyu well. Qiyu had silently lurked in Tang Jing's body. He already knew everything about him. Therefore he immediately heard a hint of displeasure. Just now, when you said those two words, there seemed to be a mysterious force that made me lose my ability to speak. As for what exactly happened, I really don't understand. Qiyu said. Tang Jing frowned suspiciously, guessing the authenticity of these words. In the end, he chose to believe these words because Qiyu didn't have to use this to lie to him. Moreover, there was still the inner demons. If Qiyu didn't say it, the inner demons would naturally say it in the future. Comparing the two, then they would know who was telling the truth. If Qiyu lied, then he would be risking Tang Jing's anger. Qiyu was a smart person and wouldn't take this risk for no reason. Tang Jing muttered. When did his words have such great power? Just one sentence was enough to control these two souls. He still couldn't figure out the reason, but he was secretly glad. If he didn't have this ability, it would be strange if these two souls didn't annoy him to death. With this move, whoever didn't listen, he would shut them up. It worked. Inner demons, you can speak now. Tang Jing thought of this and showed great mercy. The inner demons finally understood that they were under someone else's roof and had to bow their heads. Although he was a very powerful person since ancient times, in front of Tang Jing, he still had to bow his head. Even if things have come to this, I still can't make you leave my body. Then the two of you should get along peacefully. You'd better be obedient. Otherwise, I won't be polite. Tang Jing sneered, just like how Grandmother Wolf faced Little Red Riding Hood. The two famous big shots were threatened by Tang Jing just like that, and no one would believe it even if it was said out loud. But Qiyu and the inner demons didn't dare to resist. Of course, Tang Jing could guess what they were thinking and didn't want to care. Tang Jing heaved a long sigh of relief and looked up, only to see that everyone was staring at him with burning eyes. Even the mysterious lady of the ninth heaven and the 100 transformation star sovereign had actually escaped from the illusion. In fact, since the inner demons failed to resist Qiyu, his influence on these two people had naturally ended. Now the inner demons couldn't affect anyone at all. Unless he occupied Tang Jing's body, otherwise, it was impossible for him to recover his previous magical power. The others didn't know this and were all staring at him intently. When they saw him look up, everyone's heart trembled. If he was an inner demon, then they would be in trouble. They wouldn't even have the chance to escape. The 100 Faces Star-Lord's feelings were the most complicated. He had never taken Tang Jing seriously and even hated him to the bone. His good deeds had been ruined by him time and time again. This time he narrowly escaped death. After knowing that the inner demons had entered Tang Jing's body, the 100 Faces Star-Lord rejoiced but also felt that it was inconceivable. How did this Tang Jing do it? He didn't have the inner demons. This was almost impossible. For someone as powerful as the 100 Faces Star-Lord, it wasn't that he didn't have the inner demons. It was just that he had been suppressed and couldn't let the inner demons gain the upper hand. The Empyrean Fairy looked exhausted. Just now, she had used up a lot of energy to avoid herself. Now, looking at Tang Jing's appearance, she didn't know where she got the information that Tang Jing could turn danger into safety. As for Ling Er, although she looked very anxious, she was the most confident. She believed that her master would be fine. In her heart, her master was invincible and omnipotent. On the other hand, Tianquanzi had two souls entangled in his body. The remnant soul wouldn't be satisfied until it saw the final result. As for Tianquanzi, he was worried sick. Although he knew that Tang Jing usually had good luck, this was facing the inner demons. No matter how much he valued Tang Jing, he couldn't help but have little confidence. Why are you looking at me like that? Tang Jing asked with a strange expression. Wah, master, you're fine? Ling Er was like a skylark flying into Tang Jing's arms. The others were so scared that their facial muscles twitched a few times. If the opponent was the inner demons, then Ling Er's life would be in danger. Tang Jing hugged Ling Er and smiled brightly. Ling Er, do you think something will happen to me? Ling Er shook her head like a rattle drum and said, Of course not. Ling Er has always believed that master will be fine. What inner demons? How could they be master's match? Tang Jing heard this and laughed loudly. Ling is the most obedient. After saying this, he turned and stared at the 100 Faces Star Sovereign. Being swept by his gaze, the 100 Faces Star Sovereign's heart trembled. This feeling was absurd and it made him furious. He scolded, Tang Jing, what are you looking at? Do you believe that I won't kill you? Ah, is that so? Then do you think you're a match for the inner demons? Tang Jing deliberately asked mysteriously. Inner demons. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign's expression became unnatural. He said, the inner demons no longer exist. Don't use them to scare me. Chapter 849. Tang Jing's meaningful smile made the 100 Transformation Starlord's hair stand on end. That was because he really couldn't figure out what had happened to Tang Jing. Although Tang Jing still looked like the old Tang Jing, the existence of the inner demons was still unknown. If the inner demons hadn't been destroyed, then he would be in danger. The 100 Transformation Starlord had already experienced the power of the inner demons. He was both angry and afraid of this fellow. Tang Jing walked step by step towards the 100 Transformation Starlord. The 100 Transformation Starlord retreated in panic and shouted, Stop, don't come any closer. Tang Jing smiled evilly and said, Why, are you afraid? Don't come any closer. The 100 Transformation Starlord roared with all his might. Hee, do you think I'll let you leave if I don't come any closer? My inner demons want to unify the world and I still need a pawn like you. Once I control you, you can charge into the enemy lines for me. Tang Jing sneered. The 100 Transformation Starlord knew very well what it felt like to have his fate in the hands of others. Naturally, he wasn't willing to end up like this. He had just suffered a lot at the hands of the inner demons. Seeing Tang Jing like this, he naturally didn't dare to suspect that Tang Jing wasn't the inner demons. He had already concluded that the inner demons must have controlled Tang Jing. After all, even with his cultivation he couldn't contend against the inner demons, let alone a small Tang Jing. Seeing Tang Jing approaching, the 100 Transformation Starlord was burning with anxiety. He roared, I won't let you succeed. He actually didn't attack Tang Jing. Instead, he tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and rushed into the sky. He stomped on the cliff a few times and fled towards the top of the canyon at lightning speed. Stop right there. Tang Jing roared, scaring the 100 Transformation Starlord so much that he almost slipped and fell. Bang! With a loud bang, the entire canyon shook violently. The giant actually used both hands to grab onto the cliff and used all 4 limbs to climb out of the canyon. Seeing that the multiform Starlord and the giant had disappeared from the sky above the canyon, the corners of Tang Jing's mouth curled into a smug smile. Tang Jing laughed in a low voice. This multiform Starlord was really scared out of his wits by the inner demons. With just a few words, he actually managed to scare him into running away. In fact, although the inner demons were still in Tang Jing's body, the inner demon's abilities were restrained and could not be used at all. Unless he controlled Tang Jing's body, only then could he use that terrifying strength again. The 100 Change Star Sovereign did not know this at all, which was why he was scared away. In fact, Tang Jing's action was not entirely a prank. He did it because he saw the fatigue on the Empyrean Fairy's face. The Empyrean Fairy had been tortured by the inner demons and had used up a lot of her power. The remnant soul in Tianchanzi's body was also weakening, and his strength had decreased sharply. Although the 100 Transformation Starlord's strength had decreased greatly, his team was obviously not strong enough. Moreover, the opponent had the giant. Therefore, to be safe, he did not want to fight the 100 Transformation Starlord directly for the time being. There were too many unknowns. He did not want anything to happen to his people. Therefore, he had to intimidate the 100 Transformation Starlord. However, the 100 Transformation Starlord was also a smart person. As long as he had time, he would definitely figure out the trick. By then, he would understand that he had been fooled by Tang Jing. However, by then, everyone would have recovered their power, and it would not be easy for him to deal with Tang Jing. Humph, young man, you are quite smart. You used my name to scare this person away. The inner demon said with mixed feelings. Tang Jing smiled and said, That's because he is too stupid. You are smart enough, but Qi Yu's remnant soul has been hiding in your body for so long, and you did not even notice it. You are really too smart. The inner demons mocked. Tang Jing was furious and said, Qi Yu, come out and tell me clearly. What is your purpose in hiding in my body? Isn't it obvious? Once the time is up, you will be reborn. The inner demons said. Qi Yu immediately retorted, Inner demons, will anyone believe your words? Tang Jing, think about it yourself. Did I do anything bad in your body? I even helped you subdue the sword spirit and defeated the sword god. Have you forgotten? If I wanted to harm you, why would I take the risk to help you? Tang Jing was moved. Qiyu had indeed helped him a lot. Ah, what's so hard to explain? He was protecting this body, not your life. Young man, you can't be so easily fooled by him, right? The inner demons directly exposed him. Qiyu was furious. Inner demons, no one will think you are mute if you don't talk. Nonsense. Seeing that the two of them were at a loss for words, Tang Jing frowned. He did not expect them to analyze anything useful from their conversation. The others had already surrounded them, their eyes filled with vigilance. After all, he had just called himself the inner demons. They could not help but be worried. Are you Tang Jing or the inner demons? The Empyrean fairy asked. Of course I am Tang Jing. Why don't you recognize me? Tang Jing smiled and said. Then why did you say that you are the inner demons? Of course it was to scare the 100 Faces Star Sovereign. He made us so scared. How could we let go of such a good opportunity to scare him? Don't doubt Master. He is Master, not the inner demons. Ling'er knows. Ling'er said as she hugged Tang Jing's arm. Xiao Bai also happily jumped onto Tang Jing's shoulder. He held his head and kept rubbing it, turning his hair into a chicken coop. Tang Jing grabbed Xiao Bai and pretended to be angry. Stop. However, Little White grinned and actually did not give up, causing Tang Jing to be helpless. Tian Chanzi had been looking at Tang Jing with a scrutinizing gaze. After a long while he said, You are indeed not the inner demons. What about the inner demons? Did you really destroy them? Tian Chanzi's expression was a little excited. The inner demons have existed for so many years. No one has ever been able to destroy them. I did not expect them to die in your hands. You are wrong. The inner demons are not dead. Tang Jing said. Not dead? Tian Chanzi was shocked. How can he not be dead? If he is not dead, then why are you not under his control? Tang Jing hesitated. Since the inner demons were imprisoned here by Qiyu and the Yellow Emperor, then the remnant soul in Tian Chanzi's body was probably related to Qiyu. So he said directly, because I have Qiyu's remnant soul in my body. The two of them fought against each other and no one could do anything to the other. Naturally, it led to this situation. Qiyu? Tian Chanzi's voice suddenly raised a few octaves. You mean Qiyu is not dead? Tang Jing saw him so excited and was about to say something. However, Qiyu shouted in his body, Tang Jing, why are you telling him this? Do you know who he is? Who is he? Tang Jing was confused. This remnant soul was deliberately left on the bronze coffin by the Yellow Emperor, so it is the remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor. He is my sworn enemy. If he hears that I am not dead, how will he punish you? Qiyu said bitterly. Tang Jing's head thumped. The Yellow Emperor and Qiyu were sworn enemies. Since the Yellow Emperor knew that Qiyu was not dead, he would not let him go. Sure enough, Tian Chanzi's eyes had changed. He was looking at Tang Jing with a murderous look. Qiyu is not dead. I will never let him live in this world and bring disaster to the world. Tian Chanzi roared. He slapped Tang Jing with his palm. At such a close distance, even Tang Jing himself could not resist, let alone the others. He did not expect Tian Chanzi to attack him. For a moment, the situation was very critical. Qiyu was so angry that he wanted to stomp his feet. He cursed, Tang Jing, you are really stupid. Yellow Emperor, even if I, Qiyu, die, I will never forgive you. However, no matter how hard Qiyu shouted, there was nothing he could do. Stop. An angry roar burst out from Heaven Monk's mouth, only to see his palm steadily stopping in front of Tang Jing's forehead. The wind from his palm blew at Tang Jing's face, causing Tang Jing's face to hurt. Tang Jing was shocked. He quickly took a few steps back to avoid Tian Chanzi. As for the shout just now, he also heard it clearly. That was the real Tian Chanzi, not the remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor. Obviously, at the critical moment, Tian Chanzi tried his best to control his body and save Tang Jing's life. I won't allow you to hurt Tang Jing. Tian Chanzi roared hysterically. Tian Chanzi, you dare to resist me? The remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor was furious. Humph, this is my body. I make the decisions. No matter who you are not qualified to make the decisions, let alone use my hands to hurt Tang Jing. Tian Chanzi was aggressive. Qiyu chuckled. I didn't expect Tian Chanzi to save your life at the critical moment. Now you don't have to worry anymore. The remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor is already at the end of its tether and is rapidly weakening. Tian Chanzi can gradually control the body. As time passes, The remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor will only become weaker and weaker. Then there is nothing to worry about. Tang Jing heaved a sigh of relief. However, looking at Tianquanzi talking to himself, he felt his heart ache. Shut up. If you dare to help Qiyu, I'll destroy your body. The remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor threatened. Even if you destroy my body, I won't let you succeed. Tianquanzi would rather die than submit. The two of them argued back and forth. Tianquanzi's body trembled uncontrollably. It was obvious that he was in great pain. His own soul was fighting with the soul of the Yellow Emperor. Qiyu, do you have any way to help Tianquanzi? Tang Jing asked anxiously. Qiyu didn't care and said, why are you worried about him? He won't die. As for the remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor, he's dead for sure. The remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor is closely related to the bronze coffin. As soon as the bronze coffin is opened, his remnant soul will quickly weaken. The more time passes, the weaker his remnant soul will become. In the end, his soul will scatter. All you need to do is wait. Looking at Tianquanzi, who had fallen to the ground and was constantly twitching, and even talking to himself, Tang Jing was in great pain. He wanted to help but didn't know how. As time passed by, Tianquanzi's struggles gradually subsided. Finally, his legs kicked and he stopped moving. Tang Jing was stunned. Could it be that he was dead? Chapter 850. Tianquanzi slowly opened his eyes, relaxed his eyebrows and grinned. Silly boy, even if you wish for me to die, I won't die. My life is big. He stretched his muscles and bones and sure enough he was fine. He was full of energy. Seeing this familiar smile, Tang Jing heaved a sigh of relief. He punched Tianquanzi's shoulder and said, it's good that you're not dead, it's good that you're not dead. Seeing how concerned you are about me, you can't bear for me to die, right? Tianquanzi rolled his eyes and laughed strangely. I just can't bear for you to die. I still have a lot of things for you to do. Tang Jing rolled his eyes. How heartless. Tianquanzi crawled up, patted his clothes and said, damn it, if Tianquanzi was not strong enough, wouldn't I have been taken away by that remnant soul? This body of mine was obtained with great difficulty, how can I let him off so easily? You've been missing for a while. What happened? Why did you come to the prehistoric heavenly tomb? Tang Jing asked. It's a long story. Tianquanzi sighed and spoke tirelessly. It turned out that when he had chased all the way to the island nation, he had discovered that the strange phenomenon in the sky was caused by the mountain river blood sacrifice array. Furthermore, this was led by the 100 Transformation Star Lord, and it had already been completed. The demon clan had already returned, and he was powerless to reverse the situation. However, according to his observations, there were not many demon clans who had returned, so he was relieved. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, he had been tracking the demon clan and discovered that they had actually split into two groups. One group directly took the ship back to Wuxia with great fanfare, and the other group quietly returned to Nanyang. After that, they took a big detour and entered Wuxia from the southwest border, and directly snuck into the 10,000 huge mountains. Tianquanzi followed them all the way. He knew that the 100 Faces Star Sovereign had a deep meaning behind his actions. The demons on the ships were there to attract the enemy's attention. The most important thing was the people returning to the 100,000 mountains. When the Heaven Monk realized that they were actually plotting something, he observed them from afar. Unexpectedly, one day he did not know what the 100 Transformation Star Lord did, but something actually broke out of the ground from the graves in the prehistoric heavenly tomb. That battle was extremely huge and it caused a huge tremor between heaven and earth like an earthquake. The tremors detected by the outside world were caused by this. Tianquanzi discovered that the things that broke out of the ground were actually sets of white bones. It was obvious that they were left behind after death, and were the experts from the ancient times who were buried in the prehistoric heavenly tomb. But what surprised Tianquanzi the most was that one of the targets was actually a giant with flesh and blood. Tianquanzi had lived for more than 1,000 years, but he had never heard of or seen such a giant. He was really shocked. The giant clan had long disappeared without a trace in the long river of history. Tianquanzi naturally did not know, but he understood that all of this was troublesome. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign and the other demon clans were extremely excited, as if they had a secret technique to control these white bones and giants. In addition, there were also those demonic beasts. Under the orders of the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, the white bones first landed in the canyon, followed by the demonic beasts, the 100 Faces Star Sovereign and the demon clan. Hearing the movement at the bottom of the canyon, Tian Chanzi understood that something must have happened below. In order to investigate, he did not hesitate to chase down to the bottom of the valley. He just happened to see the 100 Faces Star Sovereign and the others tying a chain to a huge bronze coffin, trying to pull it up from the canyon. Unexpectedly, at this time, a sudden change occurred. A black aura rose from the bronze coffin, and when the nearby demonic beasts S and demon clan S were touched by the black aura, they immediately fell to the ground and died. The crowd screamed and fled in all directions. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign seemed to have a plan, and ordered White Bones to attack again. It seemed that White Bones could fight against the black aura, and the two sides were entangled. At this time, the 100 Faces Star Sovereign ordered the other demonic beasts to tie the chain to the huge bronze coffin, and was about to pull it up directly. Tian Chanzi had been hiding in the dark to observe. He also wanted to know what was hidden in the huge bronze coffin that could make the 100 Faces Star Sovereign and the demon clan move so many people. The canyon was almost full of the 100 Faces Star Sovereign's men. Although Tian Chanzi hid well, when the demonic beasts climbed up the cliff, he was still exposed. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign's eyes immediately swept over and he shouted, "It's you!" and was about to attack. Tian Chanzi knew that he was no match for the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, and it was impossible for him to escape now. His eyes locked onto the huge bronze coffin and he made up his mind. Since he was going to die anyway, he would go and see what was in the huge bronze coffin that made the 100 Faces Star Sovereign value it so much. Perhaps he could destroy it before he died so that the 100 Faces Star Sovereign would not succeed. When he flew to the top of the huge bronze coffin and was about to open the lid, he felt a mysterious power rush into his brain. Then he was controlled. However, he was still conscious, but he was unable to control his body. He could clearly feel that his strength was rising, and finally reached a level that he could not reach. Then he uncontrollably fought the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, and found that he was actually a match for him. Later, when Tang Zheng and the others arrived and opened the huge bronze coffin, the power of the remnant soul that controlled his body decreased sharply. What about the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul? Was it destroyed by you? Tang Zheng asked with concern. Tian Chanzi scratched his head and said non-committally, "It should have been destroyed. I can no longer feel his existence." "What do you mean by should have been destroyed?" Tang Zheng rolled his eyes speechlessly. "He is so strong, how would I know if he was truly destroyed? In any case, I have already regained control of my body, and I can no longer feel his existence. Everything is over, so you don't need to worry," Tian Chanzi said casually. Tang Zheng looked at him deeply and in the end, he nodded helplessly. I also have to thank the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul. Although he is no longer here and my cultivation has decreased a lot from my previous peak, it is still much higher than before. Now, I am already at the 9th stage of the Yuanying realm, and am only a step away from the deity transformation realm," Tian Chanzi said excitedly. This was indeed a pleasant surprise. Although it was dangerous, he felt that it was extremely worth it. If it was any other cultivator, they would most likely clamor for this opportunity. Of course, if the huge bronze coffin had not been opened, then the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul would not have been damaged. Then, whether or not Tian Chanzi would have been able to regain control of his body was unknown. In short, this was Tian Chanzi's opportunity. When Tang Zheng heard this, he was happy for him and said, "This is your compensation. Your strength has increased greatly, so when we face the 100 Transformation Star Lord in the future, we will have a greater chance of victory." Although the Empyrean Fairy and the 100 Transformation Star Lord had not yet fought, Tang Zheng believed that the Empyrean Fairy would definitely not lose to the 100 Transformation Star Lord, so their strength was guaranteed. Tian Chanzi nodded and looked at Tang Zheng worriedly and said, "The inner demons and Qi Yu are in your body at the same time. Will your body be okay?" Tang Zheng also thought it through. Since he could not chase away the two of them, there was no need to be entangled in this matter. Moreover, there were two of them who could balance each other. If there was only one, then it would be terrible and he would have to be on guard against him at all times. However, Tang Zheng also felt that he was unlucky, as if he had to deal with this kind of thing. Back then, it was Tian Chanzi who lived in his body, and now it was Qi Yu and the inner demons. Moreover, one was more powerful than the other. As for whether the future would be a blessing or a disaster, he had no way to predict it for the time being. He could only block soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir, and take one step at a time. The baleful Yin Qi here is very strong. Let's leave this place. Tian Chanzi looked at the canyon where the Yin Qi was raging and urged. Tang Zheng was about to say that they should leave, but the war soul in his hand began to buzz and tremble, and the sword's cry did not stop. Master, this baleful qi is useful to me, the sword spirit suddenly said. Tang Jing suddenly realized that the War Soul sword was originally named after the War Soul. The War Soul was a baleful qi, so naturally the War Soul sword also contained an extremely strong baleful qi. Later on, when the War Soul and the Sword Soul fused, the baleful qi became even stronger. However, Tang Jing did not go to many places with dense baleful qi. The baleful qi in this canyon could actually suppress and imprison the inner demons. Could be seen how powerful it was. Alright, then you can absorb this baleful qi. Tang Jing was overjoyed. He knew that if the War Soul sword absorbed it, its quality would definitely improve. The War Soul sword was already a heaven-level magical wave, but he didn't know what it would be like if it was upgraded. Everyone wait a moment. The baleful qi here is so strong. If an ordinary person came here, they would definitely suffer. Why don't I use the War Soul sword to absorb it? After Tang Jing finished speaking, he threw the War Soul sword into the air and shouted, "Go!" The War Soul sword floated in the air. Immediately, a strong suction force came from the War Soul sword. In an instant, a whirlpool appeared on the War Soul sword. The aura of the heaven and earth was in chaos. The evil wind roared and all the baleful qi surged in. In an instant, the War Soul sword's light increased greatly. The sword light was tens of thousands of feet long, illuminating the originally dark canyon as bright as day. So. Streams of sword qi danced in all directions, leaving deep marks on the cliffs of the canyon after being struck by the sword qi. After a long time, all of this calmed down. The air in the canyon was refreshed. Without the baleful qi, it actually seemed a little warm. With a flash of sword light, the War Soul sword flew back into Tang Jing's hands. Tang Jing looked at it carefully. And there was actually a strange symbol on the War Soul sword. This symbol was curved and curved as if it had a profound meaning. Tang Jing looked at it and actually couldn't understand it. What is this? The others all came over and stared at the symbol, puzzled. Tian Chanzi pinched his chin and muttered to himself for a long time, I have never seen this symbol before. Did the War Soul sword not have it before? Tang Jing firmly shook his head. The War Soul sword was the magic treasure that had accompanied him the longest. He knew every single detail about it like the back of his hand. Tang Jing scratched his head, not knowing what this mysterious symbol represented. It must have been a change after absorbing so much baleful qi. Sword Spirit, do you know what this means? Tang Jing had an idea and directly asked the Sword Spirit. Chapter 851. The Sword Spirit's voice sounded, Master, I feel that the War Soul sword has undergone a qualitative change. As for the mysterious symbol, it seems to contain some kind of mysterious power that even I am unable to completely understand. Tang Jing was stunned, even the Sword Spirit was unable to understand it. What did that mean? As for the quality of the War Soul sword, Tang Jing could clearly feel that it had increased by a large amount. Tang Jing, your War Soul sword has already left its mortal body and transcended into a saint. Chiyu's voice suddenly sounded. Transcendence into a saint? Tang Jing was shocked. He had never heard of these words before. What did they mean? There are thousands of time weapon magic treasures, but there are corresponding ranks. In the past, you only understood the ranks of mortal grade magic treasures such as Heaven, Earth, Profound, and Yellow. However, there are other ranks of magic treasures breaking away from the mortal body and transcending into a saint, then the magic treasure will become a holy artifact, and at this time the magic treasure will become even more powerful. But there is one thing, all holy artifacts must have an artifact spirit. Your War Soul sword has a sword spirit. This is the key to advancing to a holy artifact. It seemed that in order to restore a good impression, Chiyu spoke in detail. There are still many ranks of holy artifacts and there are a total of 6 grades. Grade 1 is the lowest and Grade 6 is the best. Your War Soul sword has just crossed the threshold of Grade 1 holy artifact. Angle, Grade 1 holy artifact. Tang Jing could not help but stroke the War Soul sword. He had never thought that there would be a new level above the heaven grade magic treasure. For a moment he was filled with emotions. In ancient times there were many holy artifacts, but after the Battle of Zhuolu the experts fell, and the number of holy artifacts gradually decreased. Especially in magic treasures, it was extremely difficult for an artifact spirit to appear, which was the key to restricting the appearance of holy artifacts. In ancient times, the weapon refiners refined magic treasures with artifact spirits, directly becoming holy artifacts. Later on, there were more and more weapon refiners, and there were only mortal-grade magic treasures left in the world, there were very few holy artifacts. Tang Jing nodded. No wonder Tian Chanzi did not know about the holy artifact and never told me about it. It turns out that the holy artifact had already gradually disappeared in the long river of history. Actually, you already possess a sacred artifact. You just didn't know about it, Qiyu said. Tang Zheng was startled. He suddenly had an idea and said, "You mean the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows?" These were the only two magic treasures he had on him that he had never been able to see through. Smart. These two magic treasures are the divine weapons of Ho-I from ancient times. They are both sacred artifacts. However, you are temporarily unable to communicate with their artifact spirits, so you have yet to fully unleash their profundities. Tang Zheng's heart could not help but thump. He had always relied heavily on the heaven-shocking bow and the sun-shooting arrows, but it turned out that he had not fully unleashed their power. If he had truly unleashed their full power, what kind of scene would that be? He really couldn't imagine. Then, are there any other grades above sacred artifacts? Tang Jing asked. He had learned his lesson. He had always thought that the heaven-level magic treasure was the limit. He didn't expect himself to be a frog at the bottom of a well. I'll leave this for you to discover. It's too early for you to know now. It will only increase your frustration and disturb your mind. It's not beneficial to your cultivation. Qiyu said, obviously not wanting to tell him. Tang Jing frowned and said, You don't want to tell me, right? Do you have any other unknown motives? He no longer trusted Qiyu, so of course he wouldn't completely believe his words. It doesn't matter if you believe me or not. I don't want to say any more. Qiyu said helplessly. Aha, Qiyu, how does it feel to eat your own medicine? The inner demons suddenly laughed out loud. Young man, Qiyu did not lie to you this time. It is indeed not a good thing for you to know in advance. It is not beneficial to your cultivation. Heng, do I need you to say good things for me? Qiyu didn't appreciate it at all. Of course I don't want to say good things for you. I just don't want to trouble you. The inner demons snorted and retorted. Tang Zheng let out a sigh of relief. The inner demons and Qiyu's words were compared to each other. Qiyu really didn't lie. He couldn't help but feel gratified. These two souls kept each other in check and balance, which was indeed beneficial to him. Otherwise, if he listened to one side, he wouldn't even know if he was dragged into a ditch. Tang Zheng was talking with the two souls, but he didn't notice that the Empyrean fairy was staring at the war spirit sword with a complicated expression. She muttered to herself, You actually upgraded a magic treasure to a sacred artifact. It's really inconceivable. Tang Zheng suddenly heard this and stared at the Empyrean fairy as if he had just woken up from a dream. He asked, You also know about the sacred artifact? The Empyrean fairy nodded, Of course I know. Tang Zheng was delighted and patted his head. He was really too stupid. The Empyrean fairy was also an ancient person and had seen a lot. He was afraid that she was even more knowledgeable than Tian Chanzi. He could ask her these questions. Were there a lot of sacred artifacts in ancient times? The Empyrean fairy curled her lips and said, Do you think sacred artifacts are cabbages? How could there be a lot? When I was still young, there were already not many sacred tools. Only those with high statuses and powerful strength could be equipped with them. It was impossible for ordinary people to possess sacred tools. Otherwise, they would be met with a fatal disaster. You should understand the principle of, a man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime, right? Tang Jing nodded, Of course I understand. Hey, excuse me, what is a sacred artifact? You are confusing me. Tian Chanzi hurriedly shouted with a suspicious face. Tian Chanzi, you didn't have a sacred artifact at that time, right? I've never heard of it. Tian Chanzi shook his head. This is very clear. Sacred artifacts gradually decreased in the long river of history until they finally disappeared. Even if one or two artifacts were passed down occasionally, people didn't know that they were sacred artifacts. For example, Tian Chanzi, you only had 4 magic artifacts at that time. Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow. By the way, did you have an artifact spirit at that time? Tang Zheng spoke frankly with assurance and gradually sorted out his thoughts. Of course there was an artifact spirit, but it was pitifully few. If a magic artifact had an artifact spirit, its power would definitely increase greatly. Tian Chanzi said with longing. He had once imagined that his magic artifact had an artifact spirit, but it was something that could only be encountered by chance. It had to be at the right time, place, and people to have an artifact spirit. Tang Jing nodded and said, But even if a magic artifact had an artifact spirit, it hadn't been promoted to a sacred artifact, right? Tian Chanzi shook his head blankly. Didn't I tell you before? I haven't even heard of the words sacred artifact. That's right. Although there are occasionally artifacts in the world, there is no way for them to be promoted to sacred artifacts. Therefore, this is the key to why sacred artifacts are unknown. But I want to tell you now, sacred artifacts are more powerful than heaven, earth, black and yellow level magic artifacts, and they must have an artifact spirit. Tian Chanzi was enlightened. His eyes stared straight at the War Soul sword, licked his lips and said with envy, "You brat, you're really lucky. You actually have a sacred sword. Do you know how many people don't even dare to dream about this?" Tang Jing laughed, his finger gently brushed the War Soul sword and said, "This is called strength, understand?" Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes and joked, "Strength my ass, you've taken all the good things." Tang Jing knew that this was probably closely related to the Sword Soul. Without a doubt, the Sword Soul was originally Qi Yu's item, so it was probably not as powerful as a sacred artifact. Although the Sword Soul's previous consciousness had been erased, its essence had not changed. Adding on the fact that it had absorbed so much balefulline Qi, it was able to undergo a qualitative change. It was also because the Sword Soul's previous consciousness had been erased that although it knew that its quality had increased, it still did not know that it had become a sacred artifact. "Tang Jing, how do you know about the sacred artifact?" Empyrean Fairy asked curiously. "Didn't I tell you that there are 2 more souls in my body?" "They told me." Empyrean Fairy looked deeply at Tang Jing and said, "Qi Yu and the inner demons are people from ancient times, even earlier than me. When I was young, I occasionally heard rumors about Qi Yu. They are not good people, so you have to be careful." Seeing that she was so concerned about him, Tang Jing smiled and nodded to thank her. "Preposterous. Who is this little girl? How dare she talk about me like that?" Inner demons shouted unyieldingly. "You are not a good person, so why can't you say it?" Tang Jing retorted, "If you are noisy again, I will directly silence you." Inner demons was angry, but there was nothing they could do. They coldly snorted a few times and did not dare to complain anymore. Empyrean Fairy is the daughter of the Emperor of Heaven. This Emperor of Heaven is a person who came after us. It is said that he is also very powerful. Inner demons, of course you don't know about them. Qi Yu suddenly said. Tang Jing's head thumped. Qi Yu must have secretly hidden in his body to know about these things. In the future he must be wary of him. There were some things he could not let him know. "Qi Yu, do you know anything about the Emperor of Heaven?" Tang Jing asked. Qi Yu smiled bitterly. "He came after me, so how could I know? However, since Ji Wuxiang said that Fuxi is a descendant of Fuxi, then this Emperor of Heaven is naturally not an ordinary person. However, in ancient times the Fuxi clan had already declined. I just didn't expect them to rise again and produce an Emperor of Heaven." Tang Jing was deep in thought. Fuxi was a legendary figure, and was even more distant than Qi Yu and the Yellow Emperor. However, according to Qi Yu, Fuxi clan had already declined in ancient times, so Qi Yu knew very little about Fuxi clan. However, there was one thing that Tang Jing was sure that Qi Yu definitely knew about, and that was the 4 symbols venerables and the Witch clan. Back then, the Witch clan was sealed by Qi Yu, so it was impossible for him not to know. Moreover, the 4 symbols venerables were damaged. If they were not repaired as soon as possible, it would always be a worry for Tang Jing. When he asked this question before Qi Yu could answer, the inner demons had already shouted, "What, you have already subdued the 4 symbols venerables? Hehe, Qi Yu, why have all your treasures been taken away by this young man? Hehe, young man, well done." Chapter 852. The information revealed by the inner demons shocked Tang Jing greatly. He hurriedly said, "Qi Yu, now that the 4 symbols venerable is damaged, you must know how to repair it, right?" Qi Yu hesitated. In fact, he did have bad intentions. He had been waiting for an opportunity to seize Tang Jing's body, but now that the inner demons had interfered, he had no choice but to appear. He was completely passive. Of course, he did not want Tang Jing to recover the 4 symbols venerable, but now that he was asked this question, if he did not tell the truth, he would not be able to get away with it. "Yes, I know," Qi Yu said helplessly. "As long as you return to the Witch tribe, there will naturally be a way to repair it. The 4 symbols venerable has always been nourished by the ley lines of the 100,000 mountains. As long as it is connected to the ley lines of the 100,000 mountains, everything will be done naturally. The square of the Witch tribe is a huge formation. As long as the 4 symbols venerable returns, the formation will naturally be activated. The 4 symbols venerable can absorb the power of the ley lines and recover." "Ley lines of the earth?" Tang Zheng had a strange look on his face. Yes, ley lines of the earth are the power of the earth. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth is not only contained in the air, but also in everything. Even the soil on the ground contains spiritual qi. However, the power of ley lines of the earth cannot be absorbed by ordinary people. Only through a magical formation can it be drawn out and used for oneself. Hee hee, you guys, the Jili tribe has many strange spells. This is something I have never heard of. The inner demons clicked his tongue in wonder. Chiyu snorted and said angrily, how can you know all about the magic of the Jili tribe? Is that so? Since it is so magical, then say it. Young man, I believe it will be very useful to you. Force him to say it. The inner demons gloated. Inner demons, you. Chiyu flew into a rage. Although Tang Zheng also wanted to know the magic of the Jili tribe, he did not want to push Chiyu too hard. That would be counterproductive. Stop arguing. Chiyu, I won't force you to tell me the Nine Li tribe's magic. You just need to tell me why you imprisoned the witch tribe in the 100,000 mountains back then. This was a problem that had always troubled Tang Zheng and even the shaman tribe. Back then, the 100 Faces Star Lord had analyzed that only Chiyu himself could imprison the witch tribe, and Tang Zheng had also seen Chiyu lose in that illusion, and even had his heart dug out. However, for a powerhouse like Chiyu, even if his heart was dug out, he might not necessarily die. For example, his heart of Chiyu had been preserved, and there was even a strand of remnant soul left in it. Chiyu hesitated, but seeing that Tang Zheng seemed to be impatient, he quickly said, I'll tell you. The shaman tribe was indeed imprisoned by me in the 100,000 great mountains. Back in the battle of Zhuolu, after my defeat, my soul scattered, turning into strands of remnant souls to do what I have yet to do. One of them was to imprison the shaman tribe. The shaman tribe is a branch of the Nine Li tribe. Why did you only imprison the shaman tribe? Tang Zheng asked curiously. Because the origin of the Nine Li tribe is the shaman tribe. It's just that too many years have passed and many people no longer remember this matter. The shaman tribe is the core of the Nine Li tribe. As long as the shaman tribe is not destroyed, the Nine Li tribe will have the chance to create glory again. I know that after the Yellow Emperor won, there will no longer be a place for the shaman tribe in this world. I will imprison the shaman tribe in the 100,000 great mountains to recuperate and wait for the future to rise again. Chiyu spoke frankly with assurance. This content made Tang Zheng's emotions surge. So the shaman tribe had such a great background. Back then, the core of the entire Nine Li tribe was the shaman tribe. Even the elders of the shaman tribe did not know about this. You're already dead. How can the shaman tribe make a comeback? Tang Zheng asked again. Chiyu chuckled. Hee hee, the reincarnation of the heavenly Tao. Back then the Yellow Emperor won. In the future there will be a day when I, Chiyu, will win. Hasn't the shaman tribe already broken through the restriction and regained their freedom? If it wasn't for my coincidence, how could the shaman tribe regain their freedom? Haha, this is the reincarnation of the heavenly Tao. Everything is possible. How can you understand the mysteries within? Tang Zheng's heart trembled. In the unseen world, there were too many mysterious things that he was still unable to comprehend. However, since Chiyu had made such arrangements, he was afraid that he truly had the confidence to do so. Although time had passed and the sea had turned into mulberry fields, and after tens of thousands of years, this day had finally arrived. But in Chiyu's heart, this day had arrived, and that was his victory. The shaman tribe is not as powerful as before. How can you believe that they can recreate the glory of the past? Chiyu laughed. In this world there is nothing that the shaman tribe can't do. When the time is right, the shaman tribe will rise. The Jili tribe will reappear in the world and achieve hegemony. Listening to his crazy laughter, Tang Zheng's emotions surged. Talking to this kind of person was really a test of one's willpower. If he was not careful, he would be bewitched by him. Don't listen to his shameless boasting. If the shaman tribe was really so powerful, they wouldn't have been defeated by the Yellow Emperor. The inner demons suddenly jumped out and mocked. Inner demons, you and I are irreconcilable. Chiyu roared. Come on, you couldn't do anything to me back then. Now you can't do anything to me. The inner demons were ready to provoke him. Stop talking. Tang Zheng roared. As expected, the two of them quieted down. No matter how powerful they were in the past, at this moment in Tang Zheng's body, they had no choice but to submit to Tang Zheng. I'll ask you one last question. Tang Zheng could see that the inner demons were getting impatient, so he said, Okay, I'll answer one more question. Don't ask me in the future. I won't answer even if you ask. Chiyu was obviously in a bad mood. Tang Zheng did not care and asked directly, Xiaobai was hatched in the holy land of the shaman tribe. What is its origin? Ever since Xiaobai was hatched, the restriction that imprisoned the shaman tribe was automatically removed. Was this also set up by you in the past? Qiyu was silent. The inner demon said first, the origin of this little guy of yours is not simple. Even I can't see through it. Qiyu, don't be silent. Hurry up and tell me what is its origin. Chiyu's voice became very old. After a long time he said, I can't answer this question. How can that be? Didn't you put it in the holy land of the shaman tribe? Tang Zheng was shocked and incredulous. It's true that I put it in the holy land, but what I put in back then was an egg, right? Qiyu asked. Yes. Back then, the first time Tang Zheng saw Xiaobai, it was an egg floating on the fiery red magma. Moreover, there were murals in the cave. The murals showed a person with 9 main meridians holding the egg with both hands. Then the egg emitted a burst of white light and nothing else. He tried to imitate it, but to his surprise the egg actually hatched after absorbing his true qi. After a dazzling white light, little white descended into the world. Now, Qiyu said that even he did not know the origin of Xiaobai, which seemed to be a little unreasonable. Qiyu, since you said you would answer my question, what's the point of hiding it? Just answer it directly and I won't ask you any other questions. Tang Jing thought that Qiyu was lying perfunctorily. How am I hiding it? I really don't know the origin of Xiaobai. Well then I'll tell you everything. You can judge whether I'm lying to you or not. I'm all ears. I've never seen Xiaobai before. I've only seen it in the shape of an egg. This egg has been passed down from the witch tribe. It's the sacred object of the witch tribe. No, it's the sacred object of the entire Nineli tribe. However, only the patriarch of each generation knows about the existence of the sacred object. The origin of this sacred object can no longer be verified, but rumor has it that it was born when the world was created. There was once an almighty ancestor of the shaman tribe who successfully hatched this egg and became your little white. That is the sacred beast of the shaman tribe. But later on, the sacred beast was said to have died and left behind an egg, which has been secretly worshipped by the witch tribe. I've also thought of a way to hatch it, but I've never succeeded. However, I also engraved that possibility in the murals because the ancestors of the witch tribe said that this way it could be hatched. Sacred beast. Tang Zheng was shocked and subconsciously stroked Xiaobai who was on his shoulder. Did this little guy have such a great background? However, it was not the egg that was born when the world was created, but its descendant. Even so, it could be seen that its family background was actually related to the creation of the world. Tang Zheng was shocked and sighed, and a storm was set off in his heart. Because it's a sacred object, it has a mysterious power, so I used it as the core of the formation. Only by activating it and making it hatch can I unlock the formation and remove the restriction. I didn't expect you to succeed by accident. Even you were unable to hatch Xiaobai back then. Why did you make it so difficult? Aren't you afraid that no one will be able to hatch it? Qiyu said firmly, since the ancestor has hatched it before, it means that there is a chance, so I also believe that it will succeed. If it doesn't succeed, it means that the day of the witch tribe's revival has not arrived. As long as it succeeds, the witch tribe's sacred beast will descend into the world, which means that the witch tribe will rise again. Tang Zheng's heart moved and he sneered, Xiaobai was hatched by me, he won't help you for your so-called hegemony, because he only listens to me. Qiyu was silent and did not answer. The inner demons praised, amazing, amazing, Qiyu, your scheme is so powerful, I really admire you. I'm afraid that even the Yellow Emperor back then did not expect you to have so many tricks up your sleeves, right? Qiyu snorted and did not comment. Young man, let me tell you why he has evil intentions towards you. He has been lurking in your body all this time, waiting for the day when he will occupy your body, then control Xiaobai and complete his hegemony. Because if he changed to another body he would not be able to control Xiaobai at all. What a good scheme. The inner demons laughed. Tang Jing felt a chill. Qiyu, this time bomb had calculated so well. This time, if the inner demons did not coincidentally enter his body, Qiyu would be in great trouble one day, and he would not be able to resist. In the end, Qiyu occupied his body and Xiaobai would definitely think that it was him, so he would obediently listen to Qiyu. The few of them rested not far away for the night. In the darkness of the night, there seemed to be countless pairs of eyes staring at them, but they acted as if they did not see them. Tang Jing knew that the 100 Transformation Star Sovereign must have sent demonic beasts to secretly monitor them. This was unavoidable, so why not let him see it openly? In any case, it wouldn't be long before he guessed that he had been tricked by Tang Zheng. The next day at dawn, the few of them made a long journey to the shaman tribe. The shaman tribe seemed to be in ruins. Back then, in order to take out the heaven and earth profound stone under the plaza, Tang Zheng had dug up the entire plaza. Therefore it was a complete mess. Seeing that, Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. The plaza was destroyed. Was the array still there? In the end, it proved that his worries were unnecessary. The array formation that Qiyu had set up was obviously not just on the surface. Even if the stone slabs on the surface of the plaza were all destroyed, the array formation was still intact. Tang Zheng summoned the four symbols venerable. When the gigantic body appeared, it immediately split into two, then into four, and then into four. They automatically walked to the corresponding place and stopped moving. It was as if they had returned to their original appearance when they were protecting the shaman clan. Looking at this familiar scene, Tang Zheng could not help but feel a little absent-minded. He still remembered the shocking scene when he walked out of the house and saw the four symbols venerable for the first time. It will take at least a day for the four symbols venerable to fully recover, Qiyu said. Then we'll stay here for a day, Tang Zheng said without hesitation. The others agreed. Fortunately, these houses were built very firmly. Although they had been gone for a long time, they were not in a dilapidated state. After tidying them up, they could still be lived in. The Empyrean fairy seemed to like the environment here. She took a deep breath and said, "This place is much better than the big cities outside." Tang Zheng could not help but laugh. She was an ancient person and had long been used to the ancient environment. Of course she would have such feelings. However, speaking of which, if the 100,000 mountains were developed, it would definitely be more beautiful than any scenic spot in the world. Of course, this was just his imagination. It was impossible to realize. There were still many monsters lurking in the 100,000 mountains. How could ordinary people get close? The Empyrean fairy leaped up like a dancing fairy. She flew up to the top of a branch and looked into the distance. Linger did not know why, but she pursed her lips and actually looked a little sad. Her eyes were red. Linger, what's wrong? Master, this place is very similar to my home. A long time ago, I lived in the mountains with my grandfather. The scenery there was also very beautiful. If my grandfather was still here, he would definitely like this place. Tang Zheng held Linger's hand and encouraged her. Linger, be good. Grandfather's spirit in heaven also wants to see you happy. Don't be sad. Linger nodded. Linger is not sad. Linger has a master. Linger is very happy. Master, you said that if I lived here, it would definitely be very interesting, just like when I was young. Linger spun around on the spot and smiled brightly. This is the old land of the witch clan. They have lived here for countless years, so they must have feelings for it. Although they are forced to leave their homes, this place must be a concern for them. If there is a chance in the future, we will return here and build this place up. Tang Zheng's heart moved, and this thought popped up in his mind. Tang Zheng stroked Linger's hair and laughed. That day will come. Really? Linger was overjoyed. Seeing Tang Zheng nod, her excited face flushed red. She hugged Tang Zheng's neck and kissed him on the face. Tang Zheng froze on the spot as if he had been immobilized. Linger was like a child who had done something wrong. She pursed her lips and said, Master, don't be angry with Linger. Linger couldn't help it, so she didn't notice. Looking at her aggrieved look, Tang Zheng sighed. She was an innocent little girl. This was just an expression of her emotions, and there was no deeper meaning. He let out a long sigh and nodded. Linger, don't cry. I don't blame you. Just remember not to kiss others in the future. It's not good. Linger nodded like she was pounding garlic. Linger will remember. Linger will never kiss others. She meant that she would only kiss Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't say anything, but from the corner of his eye, he noticed that the Empyrean fairy and Tian Chanzi were looking at him from afar. Tian Chanzi even had a meaningful smile on his face, which made Tang Zheng roll his eyes helplessly. Who knew what this old guy was thinking about? Master, look at the four symbols venerable. Linger called out suddenly. Tang Zheng quickly looked over and saw the four symbols venerable's body emitting a faint glow. He was overjoyed. It really worked. This time Qiyu didn't lie to him. Since the inner demon said that the four symbols venerable was so powerful, then he probably hadn't used its full power yet. He would have to slowly discover its power in the future. Master, look at your feet. Linger called out again. Tang Zheng looked down and found that there were still no changes on the ground. He hurriedly circulated his energy and found that a surge of energy was flowing toward the four symbols venerable. the energy of the ley lines. Tang Jing immediately remembered what Qiyu said. This was the formation gathering the energy of the ley lines, which was the spiritual energy in the soil. I am master, look at Ling Er. Wow, good job. Something is drilling into the soles of Ling Er's feet. Suddenly Ling Er made a big fuss and giggled incessantly. Hee, so comfortable. It also feels like I'm scratching an itch. Wow, master, my true energy is increasing. Really? Tang Jing was shocked. Although he felt the surge of energy flowing through his feet, he didn't have the slightest reaction. Ling Er actually had a reaction. It was really strange. Suddenly he had a flash of inspiration. That's right, since this energy could be injected into the four symbols venerable, then it could also be used by Ling Er. Because Ling Er was transformed from a ginseng, absorbing the spiritual energy in the soil was a natural thing. Ling Er, focus and absorb as much of this energy as possible, Tang Jing instructed. Yes, Ling Er will listen to master. Ling Er nodded and circulated her energy. In an instant Ling Er's body was suffused with a sparkling and translucent light. Roots actually grew from her feet and pierced into the ground. The energy entered her body through the roots. Upon seeing this, the Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi also gathered around and watched this scene curiously. Tian Chanzi clicked his tongue in wonder and said, "This girl is really lucky. Just now, I took a look at this large formation. It's really amazing. The spiritual energy in the entire 100,000 mountains is converging here. Qiyu set up this formation in the past is really too amazing. When this converging energy enters the body, it will quickly transform into vital qi and increase the cultivation level. It's much faster than this girl's cultivation speed." The Empyrean Fairy also nodded. This is her opportunity. It's harder for plants to cultivate into spirits than animals, because animals have their own consciousness. With consciousness, cultivation will be much easier. It's very difficult for plants to cultivate their own consciousness, so the demonic beasts you see are almost all animals. Tang Jing suddenly understood. He hadn't thought about this problem before. It turned out that Ling Er's current situation was really a huge opportunity. She's simple and honest, so it's a blessing for her to be taken in by you. You can protect her. Otherwise, if she falls into the hands of other people or demonic beasts, she'll be a great tonic. Eating her will not only increase one's lifespan, but also increase one's power. Tang Jing's head trembled and he said, "Stop, don't say any more. I'll protect Ling Er and not let her come to any harm." Chapter 854. As time passed, Ling Er's entire body was bathed in a burst of light. When the sky gradually darkened and the light dissipated, her eyes flashed with a bright light. Her face immediately blossomed into a smile as she cheered, "Master Ling Er has become powerful." Saying this, she stretched out her arm and a vine shot out from her palm. With a bang, it struck a distant rock and the rock immediately shattered. This move was as fast as lightning and as powerful as thunder. It was definitely a realm only an expert could reach. Tang Jing stared at her without blinking and cried out in surprise, "Ling Er, your cultivation has actually reached the 9th grade of Inedia." Ling Er's original cultivation was only at the early stage of Inedia. Now, she had actually jumped to the 9th grade of Inedia. It was truly a rocket speed. "You're much more powerful than me," Tang Jing sincerely praised. Ling Er's face was like a peach blossom as she happily said, "Ling Er is not as powerful as Master. Master is the most powerful. The two of you should stop flattering each other. Ling Er is in a special situation. The array formation in this square is indeed extraordinary. The power it gathers is no small matter. In addition, Ling Er's body is a condensation of heaven and earth's spiritual energy. Naturally, her ability to absorb and store energy is much stronger than normal people. Otherwise, if a normal person absorbed so much energy, they would probably have exploded long ago." Empyrean Fairy explained. Tang Jing suddenly understood, so that's how it is. No matter what, Ling Er's cultivation has greatly increased. This is something worth celebrating. In the future, she will at least have the ability to protect herself. Ling Er was like Tang Seng's meat. If she did not have the ability to protect herself, anyone could take a bite out of her. That would be truly dangerous. The night was like water. Everyone went to bed early. Tomorrow morning, the four symbols venerables would finish repairing. In the night, rustling sounds could be heard in the forest. Little White, who was lying on Tang Jing's bed, twitched its ears and immediately stood up. It stared out of the window and squeaked. Tang Jing got up and touched Xiao Bai, saying, "There's movement." Xiao Bai nodded seriously. Looks like the Hundred Faces Star Sovereign realized that he was tricked by me, so he chased after me, Tang Jing said thoughtfully. He got off the bed and walked out, only to find that the other three had also come out. They looked at each other and Tang Jing said, "The Hundred Faces Star Sovereign is here. Let's make sure he doesn't return this time," the Empyrean Fairy said. She knew how powerful the 100 Change Star Lord was, so she did not swear that she would definitely get rid of him. For experts of their level, it was easier said than done to get rid of him. The noise in the forest grew louder and louder, rumbling as if there was a magnificent army. Bang bang bang. Rows of tall trees were snapped in half. Pairs of cold eyes sparkled in the night like burning will-o-wisps. Tang Jing, get the hell out here. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign's roar came from afar, and the sound waves rushed over. The high walls of the witch tribe were actually shaken by the sound waves, making creaking sounds. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign slowly rose into the air, looking down at everything in the tribe from above. He happened to see Tang Jing and the others. When enemies met, their eyes were exceptionally red. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign's eyes were filled with killing intent as he said, "Tang Jing, how dare you lie to me? You even dare to lie and say that you are the inner demons. Although I don't know what method you used, the inner demons are already dead." "Nonsense, you're the one who's dead." The inner demons were indignant, but they could only complain to Tang Jing. Tang Jing took a few steps forward, looked at the 100 Faces Star Sovereign in the air, and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Are you really so sure that the inner demons are dead? If you guessed wrong, then your life will be in danger. Now that things have come to this, do you still want to lie to me? Everything you say and do along the way cannot escape my eyes and ears. Do you think I don't know? If you were the inner demons, then the people around you would have died long ago or become your slaves." Tang Jing nodded and laughed in ridicule. "Hee hee, you've actually become smarter. You finally admit it? You're so daring to play with me. Today I'll let you die in this 10,000 mountains." The 100 Faces Star Sovereign said resolutely. Tang Jing asked with a smile, "Do you think you can kill us all?" The 100 Faces Star Sovereign's eyes flickered as he said, "My demonic beast's army will definitely crush all of you." With that, he waved his hand and immediately gave the signal to attack. With a rumble, groups of demonic beasts tried to attack the tribe's walls. "Everyone be careful," Tang Jing reminded. Just as he was about to rush up, he realized that someone had beaten him to it. The Empyrean Fairy's figure flashed, and like an arrow leaving the bow, she shot towards the 100 Faces Star Sovereign and shouted, "He's mine, no one can snatch him from me." The 100 Faces Star Sovereign also faced the Empyrean Fairy and shouted, "Since you dare to challenge me, I'll let you know how powerful I am." With a wave of his hand, the aura of heaven and earth changed in an instant. A cloud of water vapor condensed, and directly turned into a ferocious beast, and bit towards the Empyrean Fairy's face. The Empyrean Fairy's hand flashed, and the mountain river map appeared in her hand. She threw it into the sky, and with a flash of light, the beast disappeared without a trace, sucked into the mountain river map. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign's eyes flickered, and he said in surprise, What a powerful magic treasure, it's actually a sacred weapon. Do you think you're the only one with a sacred weapon?" As soon as he finished speaking, the air in front of the 100 Faces Star Sovereign shook, and a black light flashed and a black banner appeared. There were complicated patterns on the banner, and it gave off a mysterious feeling. "I'll let you have a taste of the power of my sky water banner." The 100 Faces Star Sovereign shouted, and with a wave of his arm, the banner flickered, and in the originally clear night sky, there was a bright moon, and the moonlight was like silver. Suddenly, a strong wind blew, and heavy rain poured down. The strangest thing was that there were no clouds in the sky. The pattering raindrops seemed to contain a mysterious power, falling from the sky, and all of them were directed at the Fairy of the Nine Heavens. The Empyrean Fairy became the target of public criticism, but her expression did not change and she shouted, "Mountain River Map, absorb." The Mountain River Map produced a terrifying suction force, and the overwhelming raindrops were all sucked into it, but the Empyrean Fairy was unharmed. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign did not care and shouted angrily, "This mountain river map is really not simple, but I haven't used the power of my sky water banner yet. Continue to take the attack." The sky water banner shook, and for no reason, a flood fell from the sky, as if it had the power to destroy everything. Like a raging dragon, it rushed toward the Empyrean Fairy. The Empyrean Fairy's expression turned cold, knowing that the power of this attack was far stronger than before. She did not dare to be careless and shouted, "Do you think you're the only one who can summon water? My mountain river map contains everything in the world, how can it not have water?" She pointed her finger at the stately painting, and a torrential flood rushed out from the painting to meet the water column that was like a raging dragon. Boom! The two water columns collided in midair, and it was difficult to tell who would win, and they were in a stalemate. Both sides gritted their teeth and kept urging their power, trying to defeat each other in one go. However, this was obviously an extravagant hope. The two were evenly matched, and this kind of battle was a battle of attrition. As for the others, they had already chosen their opponents. Tian Chanzi originally wanted to deal with the giant, but Tang Jing beat him to it and had already fought with the giant. Tian Chanzi had to fight with the other monstrous beast. His power had increased greatly, and he was now a 9th grade Yuanying, which was far stronger than these monstrous beasts. Therefore he was no match for them at all. One by one, the monstrous beasts fell at his feet and blood flowed like a river. Ling did not stay out of it. She had never fought before, but now that her power had increased greatly, she could not help but join in the battle. There were also some monstrous beasts whose cultivation was lower than hers, so she had already defeated a few of them. However, there were many monstrous beasts and it was her first battle, so she could not help but be flustered. In a moment of carelessness, a monstrous beast sneaked up on her from behind and slapped her with its claw, as if it wanted to smash her into a pile of minced meat. Squeak squeak. Little White's voice suddenly rang out. A beam of fire shot up into the sky, and the raging flames wrapped around the demonic beast. It let out a miserable cry and hurriedly retreated. How could it have the chance to attack Ling? Tang Jing had specially instructed Xiao Bai to protect Ling. Xiao Bai was dutiful. How could he let these monstrous beasts succeed? Tang Jing's battle was also very intense. The giant relied on its huge body to suppress him everywhere, causing Tang Jing to not dare to let his guard down. However, his War Soul Sword had already become a sacred artifact. Even if it was the same heaven-flying immortal sword technique, its power would multiply in his hands. Swish swish swish. The War Soul Sword had already opened a few huge wounds on the giant's body, causing blood to flow out. The giant roared a few times but it did not fall down. Instead, its ferocious nature was aroused and the more it fought, the braver it became. The giant did not have any magic treasures and completely relied on its own body. Moreover, its body was as tough as steel, and if not for the War Soul Sword being incomparably sharp, it would not have been able to harm it. The giant's lantern-like eyes stared fixedly at Tang Jing, and its fists and feet immediately followed the direction of its eyes and attacked Tang Jing. Bang! The attack missed and a deep pit appeared on the ground. His arm directly swept across the city wall, and with a boom, a large hole appeared on the city wall. Tang Jing was shocked. This big guy's attack power was not inferior to the Four Symbols Venerable One, and it had its own consciousness. If it was a one-on-one fight, it would be even stronger than the Four Symbols Venerable One. The Four Symbols Venerable One still needed his control in order to have such a powerful fighting strength. In ancient times, when the giant clan still existed, there were still quite a few of these giants. Could be seen how tragic the battle was. At the very least, the scene he saw from Chiyu's illusion was deeply engraved in his memory, something he would never forget for the rest of his life. When the giant saw that he was unable to attack Tang Jing from beginning to end, and that his body had been cut by the War Soul Sword instead, he was both angry and anxious. His attacks became even more ferocious as if he had gone mad. In an instant, the city wall was almost completely destroyed by him, and deep pits of varying sizes appeared on the ground, as if it had been struck by a meteorite. Although Tang Jing was unable to kill his opponent immediately, fighting with an expert of this level was quite helpful in increasing his fighting strength. The more he fought, the braver he became, and the more proficient he became in the heaven-flying immortal sword technique. The horizon gradually lit up, and when the first ray of sunlight shone on the ground, all that could be seen was a scene of devastation and corpses everywhere. Boom. Chapter 855. The Four Symbols Venerable opened his eyes. His eyes flickered with light as if they were alive. This was something that had never happened before. Boom. The Four Symbols Venerables moved at the same time. They leaped over the crumbling walls and arrived in front of the giant. The giant was even taller than the four divine beasts. However, the four divine beasts exerted their strength together and coordinated their steps as if they were one. Boom. Boom. Four hammer-like fists hit the giant's waist. Brr. The four symbols venerable let out a heart-wrenching scream as he staggered backwards. However, the four symbols reverend did not give the giant a chance to catch his breath. With a flash of his body, he immediately grabbed the giant's four limbs. Thump. The giant fell to the ground, causing the ground to tremble incessantly. It even crushed the few demonic beasts below into meat patties. Tang Jing watched this scene in astonishment. In the past, the four symbols venerables required him to personally control them in order to unleash their enormous power. However, at this very moment, without his control, the might of the four symbols supreme beasts was even greater than before. Moreover, he saw a trace of spiritual aura in the four symbols venerable's eyes. It was as if the four symbols venerable truly possessed life. This was something that had never happened before. The eyes of the four symbols venerables had always been filled with chaos. They did not have eyes at all. However, at this moment they seemed to be human. Not only has the four symbols venerable recovered, his strength has also increased by a level. In fact, he has even gained consciousness. Tang Jing's heart thumped violently. When the inner demons had told him about the four divine beasts, he had thought that the four divine beasts must have had consciousness. Unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, the four symbols venerables actually recovered their consciousness. This was truly too amazing. With self-awareness, the four symbols' strength was clearly a level higher than Tang Jing's control. His eyes were burning. He wanted to go up and help, but he found that there was no need for him. The giant's four limbs were grabbed by the four symbols venerable. It struggled incessantly, trying to break free and regain its freedom. However, the four symbols venerables held him firmly, so he couldn't break free at all. Moreover, the four symbols venerables all ran in different directions. Boom, boom. The ground trembled. The four symbols venerables were like wild horses that had broken free of their reins. Not only were they powerful, but they were also very fast. Tang Jing had a flash of inspiration in his mind, and a word popped up in his mind: dismemberment by 5 horses. This scene was the best example. The four supremes each charged toward the other, and in an instant, the giant's body was straightened. His struggle instantly became more and more intense. Clearly, he understood that he was at a critical juncture of life and death. However, the four symbols venerables continued to flee silently, leaving behind deep tracks on the ground. They did not give the giant any chance to retaliate at all. Roar! The giant let out a heart-wrenching scream as streaks of blood appeared on its body. Bang! A muffled sound rang out as the giant exploded from within. Blood filled the air as it was split into 4 large pieces. It couldn't be any more dead. Tang Jing swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He was deeply shocked by this scene. The ferocity of the four symbols venerable far exceeded his imagination. Moreover, the violent and vicious aura they emitted caused him to be shocked. This murderous aura was condensed from countless battles. It was definitely not something that could be cultivated overnight. The four symbols venerable threw away the severed limbs in disgust and suddenly turned their heads. 4 pairs of eyes looked at Tang Jing in unison. Tang Jing's heartstrings trembled. Those eyes contained a soul-stirring demonic power. Even with his firm will, his heart could not help but sway. Bang bang bang. The four symbols venerable walked toward Tang Jing in unison, emitting a biting cold murderous aura and vicious aura. Tang Jing's brows furrowed. He had a bad premonition. The four symbols venerable seemed to have broken free from his control. Tang Jing, the four symbols venerable has already regained consciousness. It's my demonic pet. I'll lend it to you for the time being. Chiyu's voice rang out. There was a hint of pride in it. Tang Jing's heart skipped a beat. He said, "You're saying that the four symbols venerable only listens to your orders?" Of course. It's my demonic pet, so of course it only listens to my orders. However, I'm temporarily residing in your body right now, so I'll lend it to you, Chiyu said. Tang Jing did not comment. He hurriedly circulated his inner energy. With a thought, he attempted to communicate with the four symbols venerable and control it. However, his eyes immediately dimmed. There was actually no reaction at all. The mysterious connection from before had completely vanished. He felt dejected. He did not think that restoring the four symbols venerable this time would cause such an unforeseen event. He did not know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. The good thing was that he would have such a powerful helper in the future. The bad thing was that the four symbols venerable no longer listened to his orders. Chiyu, so you already had this in mind when you told the young man how to restore the four symbols venerable. You're really cunning. The inner demons jumped out and said jokingly, "Inner demons don't talk nonsense. In the past, the four symbols venerable did not truly awaken. This time, with the help of the formation, it absorbed enough energy and awakened its consciousness. This is also a coincidence. Qiyu immediately retorted. Tang Jing remained silent. He could not guess whether this was Qiyu's doing on purpose for the time being. In any case, he would always be on guard against the two of them. The four symbols venerable looked down at Tang Jing from above. Tang Jing raised his head and looked at it. When their gazes met, Tang Jing dismissed all distracting thoughts and ordered, "Deal with those monsters." The four symbols venerable did not say anything. It turned around and attacked the monster horde. Tang Jing could not figure it out anyway, so he might as well make the most of it. As for what would happen in the future, who could say for sure? With the addition of the four symbols venerables, the exhausted cultivators who had been besieged by the demonic beasts relaxed. They watched as the four symbols venerables slaughtered the demonic beasts in every direction. Their four gigantic bodies were like killing machines, extremely efficient. The corpses of the monsters were scattered all over the forest. Some were hanging from the treetops, some were in large pits, and some were lying in the ruins of the city walls. Tang Jing turned his gaze and stared at the Empyrean Fairy and the 100 Faces Star-Lord who were fighting fiercely in the air. The two of them had already exchanged countless blows. All sorts of abilities were thrown back and forth. It was extremely intense. Tang Jing could not help but sigh in amazement. A battle of this level was truly fascinating. He could not help but look forward to when he could become so powerful. The Empyrean Fairy and the 100 Faces Star-Lord had profound cultivation. After fighting for half the night, they were not tired at all. They were still surrounded by danger. The four symbols venerable Sky Water Banner summoned a torrential flood. After the Empyrean Fairy summoned the flood, she also summoned a huge mountain. It fell from the sky and smashed directly at the 100 Faces Star-Lord. The 100 Faces Star-Lord continuously channeled his power. The Sky Water Banner flickered and the torrential flood blocked the huge mountain. However, the huge mountain was too heavy. It fell bit by bit and the water spread in all directions. Boom! The water exploded and the huge mountain fell heavily. The 100 Faces Star-Lord was directly crushed under the mountain. The ground shook violently as if there was an earthquake. The four symbols venerable was crushed under the mountain. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Tang Jing was extremely shocked. He glanced at Tian Chanzi and Linger from the corner of his eyes. Linger was already dumbfounded. Her cherry mouth was wide open and her little tongue was sticking out. The mountain river map is actually so powerful. It can even summon a huge mountain. What else is in the map? The mountain river map was different from ordinary magic treasures. It had its own universe. It was like another world. It had mountains, rivers, plants, and trees and could be summoned for one's own use. Tang Jing had also obtained the mountain river map before, but he could not use these magical powers. The Empyrean Fairy's expression didn't relax. She was still serious as she stared at the mountain without blinking. Suddenly, the huge mountain shook. Even the ground shook as if there was an earthquake. Tang Jing was shocked. He knew that the 100 Faces Star-Lord was not dead even after being crushed by the huge mountain. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion rang out as the mountain exploded. Rubble flew everywhere like meteors, shooting in all directions. Dodge! Tang Jing stomped out and hurriedly stood in front of Linger to protect her. With the holy armor shield in front of him, a series of ping, ping, ping sounds rang out as wave after wave of powerful energy surged out from the holy armor shield. The sorcerer tribe was in ruins. It was as if they had been hit and collapsed. There were deep pits on the ground like the surface of the moon. The sorcerer tribe was the root of the sorcerer tribe. Now that it was destroyed, Tang Jing was heartbroken. If the sorcerer tribe saw this, they would be heartbroken. The rain of rocks stopped. Tang Jing removed the holy armor shield. The ground in front of him had completely caved in. It was a huge pit. The celestial master of 100 Faces stood in the pit in a sorry state. His clothes were in a mess and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. His originally delicate face had turned blue, and his eyes seemed to spit fire as he stared at the Empyrean maiden. Where did your mountain river map come from? Why is it so powerful? The 100 Faces Star-Lord roared angrily. The Empyrean Fairy snorted and did not answer. Seeing this, the 100 Faces Star-Lord was angry and anxious. Obviously, the mountain river map was more powerful than his celestial water banner. Their cultivation levels were almost the same, but due to the difference in their treasures, he was no match for the Empyrean Fairy. He was not reconciled. Previously, he was infatuated with the inner demons and was scared. Then he was played by Tang Zheng. Now he was defeated by the Empyrean fairy who came out of nowhere. He was in a sorry state. This was simply a great humiliation. One had to know that even in ancient times, Multiform Star-Lord was a ruthless character. He had always been the one to bully others and no one had ever bullied him. Therefore he treated those weaker than him as toys. Back in Mount Buzhou he wanted to keep Tang Zheng and the others as his toys. But now he realized that the power of the toys was too strong. It was beyond his imagination and his life was in danger. Run. Although he was burning with anger, he did not completely lose his mind. He knew that staying here would not do him any good. Moreover, Tang Zheng and the others were watching from the side. He was especially wary of the Four Symbols Reverend. Just now, the Four Symbols Reverend had cleanly dismembered the giant he had painstakingly resurrected. This scene immediately reminded him of the stories he had heard about the Four Symbols Reverend before he was imprisoned in Mount Buzhou. The Four Symbols Reverend was not a kind person. He was ferocious and cruel. Moreover, the Four Symbols Reverend who now had his own consciousness was not the same as before. He was definitely a big threat to him. Chapter 856. 100 Changed Star Sovereign's expression changed when his thoughts were seen through. However, he pretended to be calm and said, "I think you're the one who wants to escape." Empyrean Fairy laughed mockingly and said, "Is that so? Then let's see who will escape." With a point of her finger, the mountain and river map flew toward 100 Changed Star Sovereign. The light of 100 Changed Star Sovereign's sky water banner was very dim and was far inferior to the mountain and river map. Seeing the mountain and river map flying over, 100 Changed Star Sovereign did not dare to argue anymore. He jumped out of the deep pit and fled into the forest. Tang Zheng and the others were dumbfounded. This 100 Changed Star Sovereign was really a genius. He was still vowing to kill the Empyrean Fairy a second ago, and the next second he was running away like a rabbit. He really escaped. "Do you think I'll let you have your way?" Empyrean Fairy said coldly. Just as she was about to chase after him, she heard a buzzing sound coming from the forest. The demonic beasts that had escaped were actually running back. Even 100 Changed Star Sovereign retreated in a sorry state with an ugly look on his face. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A few huge demonic beasts' heads flew out from the forest and landed heavily on the ground, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Empyrean Fairy stopped abruptly and looked suspiciously at the dense forest. Even Tang Zheng and the others quieted down and stared intently at the front. The buzzing sound became louder and louder. A few trees fell to the ground and a few spinning things appeared in the sky. The buzzing sound came from these things. These things looked like bamboo hats but were much bigger than bamboo hats. It was unknown how they could fly in the sky. "What are these?" The few of them muttered in their hearts. They could actually force the demonic beasts to retreat. Even 100 Changed Star Sovereign had retreated. Tang Zheng and the others looked at each other and shook their heads. Obviously they did not know what these things were. 100 Changed Star Sovereign's shoulder was dyed red. This was the blood that was not there earlier. Could it be that he was injured by these bamboo hat-like things? What was it that could injure 100 Changed Star Sovereign? The few of them became nervous. Rustle. With a slight noise, a few silhouettes came out of the forest and stood at a distance. Tang Zheng's pupils shrank because he saw a familiar face, Fair-Faced Flying Dragon. Fair-Faced Flying Dragon had disappeared without a trace after they parted ways in the mausoleum of the first Qin Emperor. As for his origin, Tang Zheng had no idea. Seeing him again today, Tang Zheng couldn't help but be surprised. Fair-Faced Flying Dragon had nearly died at the hands of Qin Shi Huang previously. Who knew what he was up to this time? Tang Zheng's gaze swept past him, then he looked at the others. As they were all unfamiliar faces, and the person standing at the very front was wearing a mask. A mask. Tang Zheng's heart stirred as he faintly remembered the information he had searched for in Jian Shisan's mind using the soul-searching technique. Azure Dragon Hall's High Lord. Wasn't he just wearing a mask all the time? Could it be that Fair-Faced Flying Dragon was from the Azure Dragon Hall? Actually, Fair-Faced Flying Dragon was so powerful. In this world, other than the Azure Dragon Hall, there was no other place that had such a powerful martial artist. As for the other unfamiliar faces as well as the bamboo hat that was spinning in the air, it made Tang Zheng think of another thing. Flying Guillotine. Legend had it that the Flying Guillotine was the most mysterious assassin team in the Azure Dragon Hall. Every one of them was at least a master-level martial artist, but no one had seen them in these past few years. This was probably the Flying Guillotine of the Azure Dragon Hall. 100 Change Star Sovereign stopped and asked in a flustered and exasperated manner, "Who are you people?" The High Lord took a step forward and said indifferently, "Azure Dragon Hall." His voice was neither fast nor slow, but it was full of pressure. It was as if he was speaking beside everyone's ears, causing their eardrums to hurt. "So you are from the Azure Dragon Hall." Although 100 Change Star Sovereign lived in seclusion, he had already heard the name of this organization. What martial artists? In ancient times, martial artists and cultivators were of the same origin, but now they are killing each other. 100 Change Star Sovereign said. The High Lord said meaningfully, "With the times, this society is progressing. The situation in ancient times does not represent the current situation. Moreover, you cultivators have to fight to the death, so why can't we, martial artists, fight to the death with you cultivators? That depends on whether or not you have the ability." 100 Change Star Sovereign said hatefully. The High Lord laughed strangely and pointed at the bloodstain on 100 Change Star Sovereign's shoulder. "Haven't you already seen it? That was because you ambushed me. I was careless and fell into your trap." 100 Change Star Sovereign angrily roared. Just now, he was only concerned with escaping from the Empyrean Maiden, but he did not expect to be surrounded by the flying guillotine that fell from the sky as soon as he entered the forest. The flying guillotine almost wrapped around his head. If it had really wrapped around his head, he was afraid that his head would have been separated from his body. Fortunately, he had discovered it in time and quickly dodged. Otherwise, his shoulder would have been injured more than this. This group of people had a strong background. If it was one-on-one, 100 Change Star Sovereign was confident that he could deal with them all. However, when they were together, their strength was multiplied. Moreover, he had gone through an entire night of fighting and killing, so he had consumed a lot of energy. Moreover, he was already injured under that huge mountain, which was why he was in such a difficult situation. The High Lord laughed in a low voice, 100 Change Star Sovereign, if you are injured, then so be it. You still have so many excuses. This is not the style of an ancient expert. 100 Change Star Sovereign's eyes trembled. You seem to know me quite well. Of course. Know yourself and know your enemy and you will never be defeated. I know a little bit about everyone's background. Otherwise, how would I dare to come here? The High Lord was full of confidence. Is that so? You really think that these people can deal with me? The High Lord said, not only to deal with you but also those people. He pointed at Tang Zheng and the others. Tang Zheng and the others' pupils shrank as they stared at the High Lord. The stance was really big. The Azure Dragon Hall had always been mysterious. It was fine if they did not appear, but when they did, they actually planned such a big scheme. It was shocking and also amazing the other party's ambition. The Empyrean Fairy stared at the other party. You boast that you know all of us. Could it be that you know me as well? The Great Lord pointed at the fair-faced flying dragon beside him and said, My Azure Dragon Hall's fair-faced flying dragon has met the mysterious maiden of the 9 heavens once. Of course, I can trace your origin and know your origin. The Empyrean Fairy's eyes flashed as she stared at fair-faced flying dragon without blinking, saying, I never thought that you would actually be able to escape from Qin Shi Huang's Taiya sword. Fair-faced flying dragon chuckled. With a flick of his wrist, sword light flashed and a long sword filled with killing intent was placed horizontally in front of his chest. Taiya sword. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy cried out in alarm at the same time. Back then, Qin Shi Huang had used the Taiya sword to kill fair-faced flying dragon. Later on, the connection between the sword and the Qin Shi Huang was severed and its whereabouts were unknown. It turned out that fair-faced flying dragon had used some unknown method to steal the Taiya sword. Tang Zheng was incomparably shocked. He had seen the Taiya sword's might before. Moreover, ever since he knew about saint weapons, he was certain that the Taiya sword was a saint weapon. Such a peerless saint weapon had actually fallen into fair-faced flying dragon's hands. Didn't this mean that his strength had increased greatly? In truth, fair-faced flying dragon had taken the risk to enter Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum in order to seize the Taiya sword. In the end, Qin Shi Huang had used the sword to kill him, which was exactly what he wanted. He had already thought of a foolproof plan to seize the Taiya sword. How could he fail? Thus he secretly stole the Taiya sword. By the time Qin Shi Huang discovered it, it was already too late. At that time, fair-faced flying dragon had already escaped. Fair-faced flying dragon would naturally inform the High Lord of what had happened in Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. With the Azure Dragon Hall's power, it would not be difficult for them to find out the origins of the Empyrean Fairy. Fair-faced flying dragon proudly laughed. The two of you even recognized this sword. Back then, It was all thanks to you two holding back Qin Shi Huang that I had the chance to seize this sword. In truth, I never thought that Qin Shi Huang would be able to come back from the dead. If it wasn't for you two, I would have been killed by him. Speaking of which, I really have to thank the two of you. Tang Jing angrily said, "Fair-faced flying dragon, don't be so smug. Back then you escaped so quickly and now you're jumping out with such pride. In my opinion, the Azure Dragon Hall is only SOSO." The High Lord's gaze was cold as he stared at Tang Jing, saying, "The Azure Dragon Hall is not something you can judge. Tang Jing, in fact, I have already met you for a long time." Met for a long time? Where? Tang Jing curiously asked. However, at that time, you were only a baby in swaddling clothes. You were born with the 9-yang saint body. This kind of person is a genius rarely seen in 10,000 years. How could I let you live? Thus, I ordered the martial sect's previous sect leader to kill you. Tang Jing's heart beat wildly as killing intent leaked out from his eyes. He clenched his fists until they made popping sounds. The two of them already had a feud. Back then he was almost killed because of him. Tang Jing gritted his teeth and said, "You must be very regretful that you couldn't kill me." "There is a bit of regret. I never thought that Wu Junshan would be so powerful as to deceive everyone and allow you to escape." The High Lord sighed. Tang Jing thought about the torture he suffered when he was young and how he was lucky enough to almost lose his life. He was so angry that his eyes were about to spit fire. "You hate me, don't you? No, you should be thanking me. If I didn't want to kill you, how could you have been sent out of the martial sect? How could you have such a fortuitous encounter today? Bah, you still want me to thank you? Keep dreaming. Your achievements today have truly exceeded my expectations. If I knew your true identity earlier, I would have killed you earlier. It's just that your development has far exceeded my expectations, so I want to see just how far your 9-yang saint body can go. Unfortunately, the situation is becoming more and more chaotic. Even the Empyrean Fairy and the 100 Change Star Lord have come out. I have no choice but to take action. Otherwise, if the chaos continues, it will not be good. As for you, I can still let you live because the Azure Dragon Hall has been peaceful for so many years. It is time for you to move around a bit. A blade that has been left out for too long has become blunt and rusty. It needs to be sharpened by a whetstone to become sharper. You are using me as a whetstone. You really are boasting shamelessly. Be careful that I don't break this blade of yours." Tang Jing was furious. This High Lord gave off an unfathomable feeling. He could not see through him at all. Chapter 857. Through the mask, the High Lord's eyes were filled with a disdainful smile and said, "A whetstone is a whetstone. In the end, it is difficult to compare with a blade. Tang Jing, if you retreat quickly, I can spare your life." Wishful thinking. Tang Jing spat out a mouthful of saliva. The High Lord laughed meaningfully. "Before I kill you, is anyone willing to tell me why you are gathered in the 10,000 huge mountains?" Tang Jing suddenly realized that the other party did not know the purpose of their trip, nor did he know what happened in the canyon. "You won't know." Tang Jing cleanly cut off the other party's thoughts. The High Lord did not mind. "I will always have a way to know. If we don't agree, let's get down to business first." With a wave of the High Lord's hand, shwa shwa shwa, the others all rushed out, and in an instant, there were more than 10 blood guillotines in the sky. "Tang Jing, you killed the Sword God and the Sword 13, so you must know what this is. Today I'll let you have a taste of it. Blood guillotine." Tang Jing gritted his teeth. "Everyone be careful, this is a sharp weapon that New Era used to deal with cultivators. Many cultivators died under the blood guillotine." "What bullshit blood guillotine? If it wasn't for the sneak attack when I wasn't prepared, how could it have injured me?" The 100 Faces Star Lord roared. "100 Faces Star Lord, you and I are both cultivators. It's not too late to stop fighting after we deal with the people from the Azure Dragon Palace." Tang Jing suggested loudly, wanting to form an alliance. 100 Faces Star Lord's eyes flickered. He hesitated for a moment, then agreed, "All right, I'll agree to it for the time being." Tang Jing said in a low voice that only he could hear, 100 Faces Star Lord is very fickle. Even if he agrees, he can't believe it completely, so we have to be on guard against him at all times." Empyrean Fairy looked at Tang Jing with approval, as if to say that he was not stupid enough to know that the 100 Faces Star Lord was not trustworthy. What a touching scene. Even sworn enemies can huddle together for warmth. If there are more such cultivators, then this world will really be in chaos. The Great Lord sneered. He moved later but arrived first. He actually overtook the flying guillotine and pushed his hands forward. An earth-shattering aura swept over. What a powerful skill. Everyone had this thought at the same time. They had fought for an entire night and had consumed a lot of energy. The other side was waiting for them to tire themselves out. Sure enough, they had the upper hand. My non-phase method has not been shown to anyone for many years. Today you are in for a treat. As soon as the High Lord finished speaking, that earth-shattering aura was already in front of them. The ruins on the ground flew up into the air, whizzing towards the crowd. Everyone hide behind me. Tang Jing roared and waved his hand in the air. The holy armor shield stood in the wind like a pillar, blocking in front of everyone. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign did not seem to want to waste his energy, so he hid behind the holy armor shield as well. However, he deliberately kept a distance from them. Bang bang bang. The holy armor shield kept vibrating. Every time it hit, Tang Zheng's heart would beat violently. His blood was almost boiling and his face and ears were red. Squeak squeak. Xiaobai was indignant. In order to share the pressure of Tang Jing, he jumped up and spat out monstrous flames. The ruins turned into drops of heat in the flames and fell to the ground. The Empyrean Fairy activated the mountain river map. The map's suction force increased greatly and a whirlwind blew. The ruins were sucked into the mountain river map. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign hid behind the crowd and watched coldly. He had no intention of helping. Tang Jing, just take care of yourself. There is no need to be a shield for someone else. Tian Chanzi also shouted and stepped forward. Whoosh whoosh. A few black shadows suddenly appeared in the sky, the flying guillotine. They arranged themselves in a circle and descended with a whistling sound, aiming for the heads of the people. Be careful. The Empyrean Fairy yelled. She pointed her finger above her head and shot it at the flying guillotine. However, the flying guillotine was like a slippery loach, cleverly dodging it. The flying guillotine seemed to be scattered, but there was actually a formation among them. They were interchanging with each other and were a whole. Tian Chanzi's eyes lit up. He said, the flying guillotine is maintained by the formation. If we break this formation, they will naturally fall apart. Formations were not only used by cultivators, but also by martial artists. They could also study formations and use them in martial arts as well as when facing enemies. The Azure Dragon Palace had always been dealing with cultivators. Of course, they would not let go of such a method like formations. The opponents had more than a dozen Grandmaster warriors. If they fought alone, except for Ling'er, they would not be a match for the others. However, when they worked together and cooperated with the formation, their power increased sharply. The Great Lord was not surprised. He mocked, "You saw through my formation. Do you think you can break it?" The sky full of ruins had disappeared. The Great Lord was high in the air, looking down at them. He crossed his fingers and kept changing them. He is making hand seals. The Empyrean Fairy reminded. Making hand seals? Didn't cultivators make hand seals when they used some secret techniques? Seeing Tang Zheng's suspicious eyes, Tian Chanzi explained, warriors and cultivators are the same. They can make hand seals. This is a common aspect. It's just that there are very few warriors who can make hand seals. This non-phase method is really strange. The Great Lord had finished making hand seals. His fingers crossed into a strange posture. He opened his mouth and a sound came out of his mouth. Bang. It was a simple syllable. It seemed that he had used up all his strength to make this sound. Not only did his chest and abdomen resonate, but this sound resonated with the heaven and earth. It was shocking. This was the first time Tang Zheng had seen this kind of technique, and it was truly inconceivable. He was overwhelmed with shock as he felt a terrifying pressure descend from the heavens. Not only was it exerted on his body, it was also exerted on his spirit. For some reason, his movements slowed down as he watched the flying guillotine descend from the sky. However, he was powerless to stop it even though he had the will. Damn it! Tian Chanzi roared. His movements were half a beat slower, but he still wielded the long sword in his hand. Swish! The sword light broke through the sky and hit the flying guillotine. The flying guillotine was covered with a burst of blood, but it was not damaged at all. It was just that the momentum of the attack slowed down, giving Tian Chanzi time to dodge the attack. The Great Lord's attack was not a single attack. It was an indiscriminate and large-scale attack. The others were also affected, especially Ling'er. Her face was pale. The word almost shook her mind. The Fairy of the 9 Heavens and the 100 Transformations Star Lord were the least affected. The 100 Transformations Star-Lord originally wanted to take advantage of the situation and not contribute if he could. However, as soon as the words were spoken, he knew that he could not stay out of this. Go. Empyrean Fairy summoned a flood and rushed to the flying guillotine above Tang Zheng's head. With a bang, the flying guillotine was hit and Tang Zheng dodged a part of it. As for the flying guillotine that flew to Empyrean Fairy and 100 Faces Star-Lord, it did not hurt them. Although their movements were affected, it was not big. They finally understood that the flying guillotine's power was secondary. The most important thing was that the Great Lord's non-phase method was too strange. Combined with the flying guillotine, the lethality was really amazing. However, before they could catch their breath, the Great Lord opened his mouth again and another word came out. Ma. It was like thunder exploding in their ears, making their heartstrings tremble. An even more terrifying pressure came from all directions. Tang Zheng's face turned as pale as paper. Ling Er had softly fallen to the ground. This time even Tian Chanzi's mouth twitched. What is the origin of this non-phase method? It's so strange. Empyrean Fairy and 100 Faces Star-Lord looked at each other and realized that this was an unprecedented crisis. If they had not experienced a night of battle, they would not be afraid. But after the battle, this was really a matter of life and death. Their movements also became slow. They had not yet moved when the third word came out. This time, not only did their movements become slow, but even their thinking was half a beat slower. Once his thoughts slowed down, his actions slowed down even more. It was even more difficult to avoid the flying guillotines that were eyeing him covetously. 4 symbols venerable, stop them for me, Tang Zheng growled, but found that the 4 symbols venerable was motionless, as if he had really turned into a stone statue. What's going on? Tang Zheng was aghast. Even the 4 symbols venerable had lost his effect. This non-phase method communicates with heaven and earth. Don't look at it with only a few words and simple syllables. Each syllable can be synchronized with heaven and earth's aura and achieve resonance. This is the key. I don't know who created such a magical technique. It's really a genius. Chiyu exclaimed. Don't just praise. Tell me, what should we do? Tang Zheng complained. This non-phase method seems to have a particularly obvious effect on the murderous aura. The 4 symbols venerable's murderous aura is the strongest, so when it is suppressed by this power, it is like a mountain. Don't count on it. There's a way. Tang Zheng could not help but interrupt. People with pure minds and no murderous intent may not be affected. Chiyu hurriedly said. The inner demon snorted. Is there anyone in this world who has no distracting thoughts and a pure mind to such a state? I have seen countless people, but I have never seen such a person. The world is so big, nothing is too strange. Inner demons, your words are too absolute. Chiyu retorted. Humph, then you find one for me to see. Chiyu was speechless. He sighed and said, this kind of person is really hard to find. However, from my observation, the Venerable Lord's non-phase method has not been used yet. I'm afraid there are other words behind it. As if to confirm his words, another word resounded through heaven and earth. This time, even ordinary people could feel a resonance between heaven and earth. Everyone's face changed. This kind of martial technique was unheard of and unseen. No wonder the Azure Dragon Palace Hall was so confident. They actually had such a big killing weapon. This time, the flying guillotine did not rashly fall down to attack them. It seemed to be brewing, waiting for the final blow. The Venerable Lord was still brewing. Obviously, there was still another move. Tang Zheng was burning with anxiety. He constantly circulated his power to resist this strange power. However, the faster he circulated his power, the more violent the murderous aura in his heart surged. Instead, he felt more pressure. Chapter 858. Killing Intent. Who wouldn't have killing intent? Tang Zheng was burning with anxiety. Suddenly, his gaze landed on Ling Er, who was lying on the ground, and an idea came to him. Ling Er's heart was pure, like a piece of white paper. Could she do it? But seeing her in pain on the ground, he had some doubts. But since things had come to this, he could only try his best to fight for that slim chance of survival. Ling Er, listen to me. Get rid of all distracting thoughts, maintain your original heart, and don't think about anything else. Tang Zheng's voice seemed to have a magical power. Ling Er gave an end sound and hurriedly did as she was told. Wow, Master, Ling Er is not feeling bad anymore. Ling Er stood up, extremely surprised. Her black eyes looked at Tang Zheng curiously, not knowing what was going on. Is there really a person with such a pure heart in this world? The inner demons could not help but exclaim. Chiyu suddenly understood and said, "I understand." She had experienced a night of battle before, and her body was inevitably contaminated with murderous aura. Her temperament was affected, but her nature was simple and was not really affected, so Tang Jing asked her to get rid of the distracting thoughts. She drove the contaminated murderous aura out of her body and restored her simple nature. This non-phase method naturally could not hurt her. Hearing that, Tang Jing was overjoyed. This was truly a pleasant surprise and immediately shouted, "Linger, the enemy's divine arts are extremely strange, this time everyone will have to rely on you." Linger said in disbelief, "Master, you guys are so powerful but you still can't do anything, what can Linger do?" "Linger, you have to believe in yourself. There are some aspects in which you are stronger than us." Linger was extremely happy and nodded happily, "Really?" Linger had always thought that he was a burden, and needed the protection of his master everywhere. Linger is too happy to be able to share master's worries. The corner of Tang Jing's mouth twitched as he forced out a smile and said, "Linger, use this heaven-shocking bow and shooting sun arrows to attack the High Lord." Tang Jing summoned the two divine weapons and handed them to Linger. Linger held onto the divine weapon, her heart surging as she said, "Master, Linger will definitely work hard." The shooting sun arrow was aimed at the High Lord, shining with a cold light. At this moment the fourth word slipped out of his mouth. Bah! Linger was not affected at all. She pulled the shooting sun arrow into the shape of a full moon. She loosened her fingers and the shooting sun arrow shot through the sky. Fair-faced flying dragon had been watching coldly from the sidelines, waiting for the final moment to deal a fatal blow to his opponent. However, before he could reach the final juncture, he was shocked to find that there was actually one person who was not affected. This person's strength was obviously weaker than the others, but why was she not affected? Before he could figure it out, he saw the person pulling the bow and pulling the arrow. He knew that Tang Jing had a divine bow and this was definitely that divine bow. Fair-faced flying dragon's face turned pale when he saw the cold gleam of the arrow piercing through the air, aiming straight for the High Lord. Although the High Lord's non-phase method was powerful, when using it, one had to be completely focused. If someone was not affected and counterattacked, it would be fatal. At this moment, the High Lord was like a 3-year-old child, unable to resist at all. This was the shortcoming of the non-phase method, and fair-faced flying dragon was very familiar with it. In the past, the crisis of this shortcoming did not erupt, because once the High Lord used the non-phase method, no one would not be affected. But the strange thing was that this time, there was actually someone who was not affected. The High Lord had instead become a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. "High Lord, be careful." Fair-faced flying dragon roared and flew towards the High Lord, trying to intercept the shooting sun arrow. However, when he entered this space, his movements immediately slowed down. This was because he was also affected by this space. However, this shout finally awakened the High Lord, and his eyes suddenly swept towards the shooting sun arrow flying towards him. He wanted to dodge, but he was powerless. He could only watch the shooting sun arrow approach him. With a puff, the shooting sun arrow pierced through his left chest and went through his body. Ah! The High Lord screamed in pain and fell from the air. Everyone felt their bodies loosen and they regained their freedom. Linger covered her mouth and looked at the scene in disbelief. She did not expect that it would actually succeed and resolve the crisis. Counterattack. Tang Jing took the opportunity to shout and stepped forward bravely. The War Soul Sword pierced out to meet the flying guillotine in the air. The flying guillotine also attacked with all its might. With a loud sound, the flying guillotine was split into 2 halves. The person controlling it on the ground spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face darkened. The Empyrean Fairy recognized the High Lord, and her figure flashed as she attacked the High Lord. The High Lord clutched his chest and blood flowed out. His face showed annoyance and disbelief. Obviously, he did not expect that there would be someone who was not affected by his non-phase method. He was already injured and was not the Empyrean Fairy's opponent. He hurriedly retreated, but the Empyrean Fairy followed him like a shadow, obviously wanting to get rid of him completely. "Stop, you are not allowed to hurt the High Lord." Fair-faced flying dragon roared, and the Taya sword slashed towards the Empyrean Fairy. Facing the Taya sword, the Empyrean Fairy did not dare to take it lightly. After all, it was a sacred tool. Moreover, she was very familiar with the Taya sword and knew how powerful it was. "If you want to hurt the High Lord, you will have to step over my dead body." Fair-faced flying dragon was dead set on the High Lord, and his attitude was very firm. The Empyrean fairy snorted disapprovingly, and brought out the stately painting. A powerful suction force immediately enveloped fair-faced flying dragon. Fair-faced flying dragon's expression suddenly changed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Fair-faced flying dragon fiercely slashed a few times at the stately painting. The powerful sword chi stirred the air, trying to break free from the stately painting's restraint. However, it was all in vain. Fair-faced flying dragon was a first-grade martial emperor, which was equivalent to a first-grade yuanying. There was a huge gap between him and the Empyrean fairy, who was in the divine transformation realm. He could not resist at all. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign involuntarily rose into the air and flew towards the stately painting. No matter how he struggled, it was futile. Seeing this, the High Lord gritted his teeth and spat out the word me. The Empyrean fairy's movements were sluggish. Fair-faced flying dragon immediately broke free and landed on the ground, holding the High Lord. The High Lord weakly shouted, "Retreat!" Fair-faced flying dragon madly rushed into the forest, and his voice came from afar, "The flying guillotine is behind, stop them." In order to buy time for the High Lord to escape, he did not hesitate to sacrifice the flying guillotine. Change formation. More than a dozen martial masters shouted in unison. The flying guillotine changed formation in mid-air, and they shuttled back and forth. Their figures flickered, making it difficult to see clearly. Attack. With a loud shout, more than a dozen flying guillotine attacked the few people at once. They hummed and spun non-stop, like bloody mouths that were choosing people to devour. A group of dragons without a leader, yet you still dare to provoke me. Humph, I'll kill you first and let you know the consequences of sneak attacking me. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign roared and rushed over. The celestial water banner shook, and a torrential flood appeared out of thin air, hitting the flying guillotine and breaking the formation. Once the formation was broken, more than a dozen martial masters were immediately revealed, and they were flustered. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign rushed in and killed 2 people with just a few moves. However, the 100 Faces Star Sovereign did not stop and rushed into the forest in the blink of an eye. He's trying to escape. Tang Jing shouted, wanting to chase after him, but was stopped by a few martial masters. Damn it, get out of the way. Tang Jing roared in exasperation, but the few of them were like a human wall, blocking in front of him, making it impossible for him to pass through. Forget it, let's take care of these people first. After the Empyrean fairy finished speaking, she displayed her divine might, and Tian Chanzi and the 4 symbols venerable did not hold back either, killing in all directions. The group of martial masters finally could not hold on any longer. Under the circumstances of paying the price of a few lives, they fled in all directions. Obviously, they knew that if they fled together, their chances of survival would be even slimmer. If they scattered and fled in all directions, there would always be someone who would be lucky enough to escape. This method was extremely rare. Tang Jing had too few people on his side, and in the end, a few of them escaped. Tang Jing did not care about these small fries, but in his heart, he gradually understood that there was a discrepancy in the information he searched in Jian Shisan's mind. It said that the flying guillotine was invincible, and many cultivators had died in their hands. Now it seemed that the flying guillotine was powerful, but that was because they had not faced experts like the Empyrean Fairy and the 100 Faces Star Sovereign. Otherwise, the flying guillotine could only flee in all directions. Perhaps, the flying guillotine had to cooperate with the Venerable Lord to display its great power. Just like just now, if Linger had not insisted on coming together, then they would definitely have been in big trouble, and even had their heads cut off by the flying guillotine. Therefore, the rumors of the flying guillotine were not all nonsense. This was then and now, and the situation was different. Let's continue to chase after the Venerable Lord. Tang Jing did not want to let the tiger return to the mountain, and said decisively. Several people agreed. They all had a lingering fear of his non-phase method, so they really wanted to leave him in the 100,000 mountains. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Several people shuttled through the forest, like ghosts. Their speed was beyond imagination. Suddenly, the sound of fighting rang out in front of them. They were overjoyed and chased after it. However, they only saw a figure fleeing far away. It was obviously the multiform Star Sovereign. There were many corpses on the ground, and only one person was left standing. However, his body was dripping with blood and he was in a sorry state. Long Xianyuan. Tang Jing was secretly shocked. He recognized that the other party was actually the patriarch of the Long family, and those who died were probably also from the Long family. Why would the Long family be in the 100,000 mountains? Seeing Tang Zheng looking at him with an unfriendly expression, Long Xuanyuan's heart jumped wildly. This time, it was a very risky move for him to enter the 100,000 mountains. Although he grew up near the 100,000 mountains, his elders had warned him not to set foot in the 100,000 mountains. This time he realized that Tang Zheng's purpose in coming to Dianan was not simple. In addition, Tang Zheng rushed into the 100,000 mountains in a hurry. He guessed that something big must have happened, so on a whim he brought people to chase after him. What he discovered along the way was an eye-opener and a deep shock. However, before he could find Tang Zheng, he found a person holding a masked man in a hurry and slipped away from them in the blink of an eye. Long Xuanyuan was shocked. There was actually such a strong martial artist, but before he could say a few more words, he realized that another child had rushed over. This child actually did not distinguish between right and wrong, and directly started killing his people. Of course, he wanted to stop it, but found that it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. However, after the child killed his men before he could kill him, he was chased by the pursuers. In the next second he saw that the pursuer was actually Tang Zheng. Chapter 859. Their eyes met, and Tang Zheng and Long Xuanyuan looked at each other in disbelief. Why are you here? Tang Zheng's expression changed slightly, his two sword-like eyebrows were raised high, and he asked straightforwardly. He subconsciously thought of the conflict with Long Tingfei and Dianan. The Long family didn't have any reaction, so he didn't care too much. Now that he saw Long Xuanyuan in the 10,000 mountains, he naturally thought that the other party was here for him. Long Xuanyuan's expression was complicated. The people he brought were all wiped out, and then he met Tang Zheng and the others. He knew that if he said something wrong, it would lead to serious consequences. Tang Zheng's strength was far superior to his. No one would know if he killed him in this desolate 10,000 mountains. Some time ago there was a huge earthquake in the 10,000 mountains. I guessed that there must be a problem, so I came to investigate. Long Xuanyuan replied without hesitation. This was indeed one of his goals. Who is he? Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi looked at Long Xuanyuan lightly, not putting him in their eyes at all. Long Xuanyuan also felt this contempt, but he didn't dare to refute. He had already guessed the identity of these two people. One was Tian Chanzi, and the other was the mysterious woman who helped him kill the sword god. Greater than overequaled, even though Long Xuanyuan had seen enough big battles in his life, he still couldn't help but feel nervous when he saw these two people. I am Long Xuanyuan of the Dianan Long family. Long Xuanyuan introduced himself modestly. When Tian Chanzi heard this, he didn't have much of a reaction at all. He said directly, "Why are we wasting time here? Hurry up and chase after the 100 Faces Star Lord. If we let him escape, it will be like looking for a needle in a haystack." The 100 Faces Star Lord was proficient in transformation techniques and could transform into anyone. This was a skill that the 100 Faces Star Lord had never used before, so they were quite afraid. There's no need to chase. Empyrean Fairy suddenly said, "He has already escaped into the vast 10,000 mountains. There is nowhere to find him." Tian Chanzi glared at Long Xuanyuan with an unfriendly expression. Long Xuanyuan felt as if he had been locked onto by the god of death, and a sense of fear involuntarily rose in his heart. It's all his fault. If he hadn't delayed us, the 100 Transformation Star Sovereign definitely wouldn't have been able to escape. Tian Chanzi said coldly. Long Xuanyuan wanted to defend himself, but he found that he was not confident enough. But in the end he took a deep breath and mustered up his courage. He said hesitantly, "Senior, is that child called the 100 Change Star Lord? Actually, we can be considered to have delayed him a little." Although he lived in the vicinity of the 100,000 mountains, he did not know of the great name of the 100 Transformation Star Lord like the Azure Dragon Hall and the Li Palace. However, for a child to be called the 100 Transformation Star Lord and be so feared by these people, he was definitely not an ordinary person. Although he had doubts in his heart, he still tried his best to explain himself. He was deeply afraid that the other party would really put all the blame on him. "You still dare to quibble?" Tian Chanzi shouted angrily. Although he was usually very gentle to Tian Chanzi, and even a little disrespectful to him, when facing the unfamiliar Long Xuanyuan, he was still very imposing, causing people to not dare to resist. Long Xinyuan didn't know how to respond, and the fear in his heart grew stronger and stronger. At this point he finally understood that no matter what grudges he had with Tang Jing had already left him far behind. If he recklessly wanted to take revenge, he was afraid that he would be the first to die, and then the unlucky ones would be the Long family. In fact, Long Xinyuan was very clear about what his son Long Tingyu had done. It was impossible to say that Long Tingyu's death had nothing to do with Tang Jing, but it was a bit far-fetched to say that it had too much to do with him. Long Tingyu was actually reaping what he had sown and had only himself to blame. Although Long Xinyuan was very unwilling to admit this, he knew that this was the cruel reality. He was smarter than the other patriarchs in that he wouldn't go to a dead end. Such a long time was enough for him to calm down and think clearly about the cause and effect. If he wasn't such a person, he wouldn't have trusted Mu Hongyan so much and handed over all the properties of the Long family to her, letting her, a person with a different surname, take care of them. Moreover, Tang Jing had actually done a favor to the Long family, and Nana's life was saved by Tang Jing. If he stubbornly dealt with Tang Jing, not only would it be of no benefit to the Long family, it would also be ungrateful. As for Long Tingfei's death, how could the life and death of a side-branch rice bucket affect Long Xuanyuan's heart much? If it was said that before he entered the 10,000 mountains this time, he still had some hope in his heart to see if he could create some trouble for Tang Jing, but at this moment, this kind of thought had completely disappeared. He had already made up his mind to write off his grudge with Tang Jing. He had saved Nana's life and Long Tingyu's death had cancelled each other out. But the crisis in front of him was that Tian Chanzi seemed to have blamed him for the escape of the 100 Faces Star Lord, causing him to be in trouble. Looking at Long Xuanyuan's twitching mouth, Tang Jing couldn't help but think of Nana. After all, the other party was Nana's grandfather. Moreover, both of his sons had already died, so he was indeed a pitiful person. As for the Long family, Tang Jing didn't think that they could threaten him now. Therefore, whether it was for the sake of Nana or Mu Hongyan, he was prepared to let Long Xinyuan go. Tang Jing coughed and stood up. Long Xinyuan looked at him in shock, not knowing what he was going to do. He was terrified to find that not only was he facing Heaven Monk, even he was facing Tang Jing, he was actually feeling fear in his heart, as if he was looking at a tall mountain. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He was really old and he had to admit that he was old. Patriarch Long, I don't know why you entered the 10,000 mountains this time, but the 10,000 mountains is not a place you should come to. I'm sure you have experienced the danger just now. However, if you want to target me, you have to think twice before you act. For the sake of Nana and Sister Mu, I will not pursue this matter. Please do as you wish. Tang Jing said. Seeing that Tang Jing didn't pursue the matter, Long Xinyuan heaved a sigh of relief. He couldn't wait to wipe the cold sweat on his forehead and said, Tang Jing, you misunderstood. I definitely didn't mean to target you. As for the grudge between you and the Long family, I have thought it through. Nana and Hongyan have been taken care of by you. I haven't personally thanked you yet. There's no need to thank me. Sister Mu has helped me a lot. Moreover, I like Nana very much. I have always treated her as a sister. Long Xinyuan heaved a sigh of relief. He really didn't have any resentment. He asked nervously, then can I go and see Nana in the future? The older generation valued the inheritance of the family very much. Long Xinyuan only had one descendant left, Nana. In his heart, he missed her very much. Tang Jing occasionally heard Nana mention her grandfather. He knew that Long Xinyuan had always treated her well. After pondering for a while, he agreed. This was Long Xuanyuan's right. You are Nana's grandfather? The Empyrean fairy suddenly asked. Long Xinyuan was even more nervous when facing the Empyrean fairy. He knew that this was the fierce person who killed the sword god. He hurriedly bowed slightly and said, Yes. Nana is my disciple. The Empyrean fairy simply said this sentence and didn't say anything else. Long Xuanyuan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He looked at the Empyrean fairy in disbelief. His granddaughter was actually a disciple of this person. This was really the Long family's fortune. Immediately, he bowed deeply to the Empyrean fairy and said, It is the fortune of 3 lifetimes for Nana to be able to enter your sect. This old man thanks you. The Empyrean fairy looked at him indifferently and said, I accepted her as my disciple because of her talent. It has nothing to do with you and the Long family. Yes. Long Xinyuan hurriedly nodded and didn't dare to refute. But this is also a great fortune of the Long family. Can I ask you to let me play host after you leave the 10,000 mountains? I said this has nothing to do with you. The Empyrean fairy refused. Long Xianyuan didn't dare to persuade again, but the wrinkles at the corner of his eyes were filled with joy. Suddenly, his heart moved and he pointed in a direction and said, "There is an injured person going in that direction. Why didn't you say so earlier?" Heaven Monk snorted angrily and rushed out as if he was flying. Tang Zheng and the others no longer cared about Long Xianyuan and shot out. Since they couldn't catch up with the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, they would chase after the Azure Dragon Hall's High Lord and fair-faced Flying Dragon. These two people would definitely escape from the 10,000 mountains. In the blink of an eye they disappeared. Long Xianyuan put away the shock on his face, hesitated for a moment, and also chased after them. This time he didn't want to deal with Tang Zheng, but wanted to see what he could do to help. The change in his way of thinking allowed both sides to bury the hatchet, and also gave himself and the Long family a chance to live. The few of them were as fast as lightning, shuttling through the dense forest. Suddenly the Empyrean fairy shouted, "There is the smell of blood in this direction." The High Lord was injured, and the smell of blood was definitely the High Lord's. The few of them were shocked and chased forward. Sure enough, they saw a figure in front of them. It wasn't the High Lord or fair-faced Flying Dragon, but a member of the Flying Guillotine who had escaped earlier. The other party didn't seem to be surprised by the arrival of the pursuers. Instead, the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of complacency. "You want to kill the High Lord? Dream on. It seems that you guys expected us to chase after you, so you deliberately used this method to lure us here. In fact, the High Lord and fair-faced Flying Dragon have already escaped to God knows where, right?" Tang Jing saw through the other party's thoughts with a glance. The other party's eyes fluctuated violently, but he didn't say anything. Tang Jing understood. As expected, he guessed correctly. This High Lord was too smart. However, his left chest was pierced by the shooting sun arrow, and his heart should have been hit as well. Why wasn't he dead yet? Tang Jing guessed that the other party must have a special life-saving method. Capture him alive. Tang Jing decided to capture him alive and used the soul search to search for more information about the Azure Dragon Palace. The other party's expression changed greatly. He didn't resist but raised his hand and slapped his own head. With the other party's strength, his head would probably explode like a ripe watermelon. "You want to die in front of me? Not so easy." Tang Zheng learned from Jian Shisan's mistake, so he couldn't let the other party succeed. He stretched out his arm and used the swallowing heaven technique. A black hole appeared in his palm, and immediately sucked the other party into his palm and controlled him. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.